Jordan.
Hey mate, how you going?
Hey, we finally get to chat.
We're on.
Hey, we're on. Let me see if I can figure out this screen. Hold on, mate. My tech abilities, well, they're all right for some of my age. I do, especially when I got a 40-kilogram bloody German Shepherd at my feet. Hold on. Oh, where is it? Oh, that's interesting. G'day, mate.
Hey, how you going?
I'm good. I love the fact that you're casual.
Yeah, look, that's it. At the end of the day, it's too hot I think we can dispense with the formalities. So, no, I've been enjoying a rare day off today. So, been hitting the gym and just getting through time.
Mate, I wish I could say I've been hitting the gym. It's been a long time.
You could say what, one person I used to know said, who's Jim?
Yeah, no, I like it. Well, it would have been nicer to meet in person for a coffee or a beer, but this is just as good. I know you're a busy man.
2026, that can be the goal.
We'll both make that a New Year's resolution. Eh?
Not too far into the new year either yet. So my world since the election has been pretty crazy. So
I've been I know we haven't spoken much since the election, but I've been following it a bit. With all your legal and lawyer stuff, and mate, you're gonna get
what's going on?
Vic executive.
I might dive a lot of things, but boredom's not going to be one of them. So I have this pathological need to hunt down and destroy all of my free time. So at least trying to channel that in good directions these days.
Well, it could be worse. You could be sitting at home doing nothing productive whatsoever, and there's a lot of people that do that. I've been guilty.
That's very true.
In the past, are you in the country at the moment?
So I'm in Geelong. So
that's country.
Yeah. I think it's still technically regional. It's probably about as far as you can stretch the definition these days. I don't know if you've been between Melbourne and Geelong recently, but it's all going to be one big connected mega city.
Oh, really?
10, 15 years, I'd say so.
Well, they've got to branch out and do something about housing, I suppose, somewhere. But it would be disappointing. I've spent a few times down at Geelong for basketball tournaments, holidays. I've got some family down there as well. And it's just a beautiful part of the world. So it would be a pity it would become a mega city. But we've got
Geelong's. It's technically a city, but it's still a big country town, really.
It is.
So I was born in Geelong, so that's something for it.
Yeah,
and of course, a great football team, the Cats, Mighty Cats.
Mate, do you want us to get on tonight or not?
Well, in my defence, I'm a child soldier for Geelong because my parents told me that when we were kids, they told us you can barrack for whatever team you like, but if it's not Geelong, you have to find somewhere else to live. So we were basically conscripted. And at the time, this was like back in the early 90s. It was the worst thing in the world. And then after a little bit, I thought, that worked out all right. We had a few good years there. So,
well, my story is a bit the opposite. Like I had 7 brothers, and not all of them except for one were just died in the wool Essendon supporters. Every single one. This back in the 70s. And I just got into footy, and I was trying to figure out which team to follow. And all my brothers wanted me to follow Essendon. But mate, when you've got 6 older brothers and 1 younger brother, you tend naturally, it's sort of like the middle brother, but you got the 6 older ones. So it's a strange sort of situation. But the thing you always want to do as that brother is to wind up the other brothers. So my decision made and went along this line. I don't want to follow Essendon because that would be just like my brothers, but how can I antagonise them the most? I know I'll follow Richmond because it's nearly the identical jumper, but it's a different colour sash. So that was my thinking. And thankfully, though, Richmond at that stage were far more successful than Essendon. So I had a lot of bragging rights through it, but my brothers hated me for it.
Well, I'm the oldest of 3, so I like to joke that I was, for 18 months, an only child. There was a brief moment where I remember not having brothers, and then my younger brothers are great, and they're both much better behaved and much more. They've had a much more pro-social life than what I have over the years, but it's great now. I get to be Uncle Jordan. They've all got little ones now. My youngest brother Bodie's just had his second one, so it's
nice.
Yeah,
Uncle Jordan. Take a guess how many times I'm an uncle.
Good God. With that many brothers, I'd say it'd have to be in the low 30s or something, just about.
I know, closer to 50.
Oh, my God.
It's crazy. Because all my brothers have had, between most of them, except for one, have had between 4 and 5 kids. So I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm the only one who never got married and had kids. So all of them had it. So you multiply them, it's in the 40s. But it's pushing. The ridiculous number actually is I've given up counting or even trying to follow it. I said to all my brothers, I don't want to worry about Christmas, don't want to worry about birthdays. I'll catch up with you guys when I can. You guys look after the rest. Because the amount of great nephews and nieces I've got now is in the 30s. It's just insane. I can't keep up. I'm not going to keep up.
Yeah,
I've got me and my job. That's it.
Yeah, Ditloff family Christmas keeps getting bigger and bigger. There's something like sort of 40 of us now, which is pretty cool because it really all started with my grandparents coming over from Germany after the war, and then there's a little clan of us now. So, yeah, well, take advantage. I did that for, I reckon, 25 years, and then because I was the only single guy, and I just felt like the third wheel all the time. So I got to a point where I just sent out an email to all my terrible way of doing it. I sent out an email to all my family and said, listen, I feel like the third wheel. I'll come after Christmas. I'll try and visit you when I can, but I'm not coming down for Christmas. You have it with your families, and I will just have the day to myself. And you know what? It's actually worked out quite well because I actually enjoy my Christmas days because I spend the whole year by myself. So I go for a drive. Me and the dog will go somewhere, and then I just go visit the family after that. Because when you go down there, and it's everybody, not so much in your clan, but as it gets bigger, you never really get time with anyone all the time. It just becomes noise. And you don't quite get around to having those meaningful moments and conversations with your brothers. So I changed a little bit, which I think's worked out well. But I do miss sometimes the family gatherings. Like, as you could no doubt imagine, Christmas, for whatever reason, family gatherings always end up, they always say you can't talk about politics and religion. That lasts about half an hour. And then when you've got a family of 10, mate, it's just full on. It's just goes gangbusters. Yeah, no, it's funny. German family gatherings are very like, it's a little bit like being at court, and I don't mean court like legal court. It's more like, high diplomacy, and, it's like, don't mention the war. You never, like, it's very polite society, like everything's kind of all subtle, and, everyone sort of asks questions that really mean other things. And German interrelationship stuff is often, we've got a reputation as a people for being very blunt and direct to others, but within family dynamics, it's very like, very diplomacy,
diplomatic.
Yes, very much so. It's all very like formal, very formal.
Then I wouldn't fit in because, mate, if I got amongst a German family like yours, I would be wanting to ask so many questions.
Yeah, it's maybe you can ask me some of them today because it's a fascinating. I remember being in primary school at Rokewood Primary School, and that's like a school of 100 kids, very very regional, and doing stuff for like Anzac Day and Remembrance Day, and kids like, oh yeah, my granddad was at this place and that place, whatever. I'm like, yeah, my grossparty was in the U-boats, so.
Was in the U-boats?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He was a communications engineer in the U-boats. So like their survival rate was like minuscule. So it's pretty amazing up here at all, to be honest. But he was a civil engineer by trade, and that's what he did when he came out here, and he had to get his degree again, and worked at the Ford factory while he was learning English and all that sort of stuff. So it's a pretty amazing story.
I was watching what was the film the other night? Tom Hanks, Greyhound. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have.
Amazing. It's kind of sad. I think. I mean, you have all your different ideologies, and people are going to be right and wrong. At the end of every war, pretty much, there's a winner and a loser. But a lot of the men that go fight for their country do it for the right reasons. But if you're on that losing side, you get tainted a little bit, and it's just a bit of a pity. It's not embraced a little bit more. Like a lot of the German, and I'm right into the war history. A lot of the German soldiers, they fought for their countries like the Allies did, and they died for their countries, and they were shoulder to shoulder, all that sort of thing. They, in the end, were just on the wrong side or the losing side.
Yes.
But their sacrifice shouldn't have been diminished because of that.
Well, it's interesting because my grandfather, my mum's dad, so my pa, he was a prisoner of war in Changi, and so he so he survived the war as well, which is pretty miraculous. And he and my grandfather actually got on really well. So the German and British side kind of got along quite well, whereas my grandfather, my mum's dad, my pa, he was always never forgave the Japanese, you know. But I think it was very different because they were so brutal, you know.
Yeah, Dad was in the RAF in New Guinea, so he saw the worst of it. Hated the Japanese. Went to his grave hating them. Had a lot of respect for the Germans. His view, for example, on Hitler, he began as a genius, but the war turned him into a madman. So that was his brief summary. He's like most war veterans. He didn't talk about it much. I actually got more out of Dad when he had on Anzac Day when I went to some of the services with him, and all his mates would then talk about it, or when all his relatives would come back for birthdays, weddings, funerals. My sister, I love her to death, but she was annoying me, and my little brother they'd all get round this table. So you didn't have the social media or anything, but they'd talk about their experiences through the war. It was just fascinating stuff to sit next to that table and just listen, you know, for 2 hours. And the more they drank, the more they opened up. So, he had a lot of respect for a lot of people in the wars. He hated, Dad hated the Japanese, didn't like the Russians much. He had a lot of time for the Germans, didn't like the Italians.
My grandfather would feel the same way. He was not a big fan of the Italians. He used to say, all they want to do is drink and womanize and surrender.
Yes.
He was a very Prussian, like my grandfather was just deadpan, you know, you'd never know whether he was joking or not. And there's a lot of commonality between the English traditions and the German, and even the British royal family. The linkage there is incredible. You know, so Saxburg Gotha wasn't a great look during the war. So that was
no, it's interesting. One of the things I'm going to share with on the podcast tonight is this brilliant ad. I don't know whether you've seen it. It's promoting some chocolate manufacturer, but I don't know whether you're aware of it. But when the German and British troops in World War I, in the first year of the war, on Christmas Day, they came together and played a soccer game.
Yes.
Yeah, there's an ad out about it. It's brilliant.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm going to share it. Being Christmas, I thought I'd share it. But anyway, so hey mate, have you watched how I conduct these things?
I honestly, I regret to say that I haven't been able to catch any of your podcasts yet.
I haven't. I haven't. Most of the time, it's just me. I've had a few people come on board over the journey. So great. Been trying to get more other. I had, you know, Scott Challen from.
Yes.
He was March for Australia. Yeah. So I had him on. We had a 2-hour conversation. So just so you know, when I go through it before.
He's put Australia first. You got to be careful because you'll get in trouble from saying the wrong thing. March for Australia.
Mate, there's so many of them.
March for Australia.
What's Monica Schmidt's one?
March for Australia is slightly more spicy. You know, they don't mind getting their hands dirty a bit with the NSN and stuff, although I don't think they're going to be around much longer with these laws elbows passing. But
that's a subject for discussion tonight.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, when I say I don't think they'll be around much longer, I just mean you won't be able to see them, but they'll obviously still be there, and I think they're going to grow.
Well, that's the problem, though, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
You're going to send it underground. I mean, it was I got onto, you know, you're on that X Spaces last night.
Yes.
So I was listening to it a little bit. I noticed listen to Jordan, see what he got to say. By the time I got on, you were getting off.
Yeah.
But then they were talking about, and I've watched or listened into a few X Spaces, and I thought about jumping on, but they were talking about getting rid of Albo and replacing it. And they kept banging on about who was going to replace him. I said, God, do these guys not know their politics? The ALP changed this, so it's nearly impossible to change a leader midstream. You know, you've got to go through the whole party voting and all that sort of thing to change. Which I think is actually a good thing. But
I'm just going to quickly turn the light on because I've got beautiful daylight at the moment, but I think it's going to fade. So
actually, that's a pretty good idea. I'll do the same thing. Hold on. Yeah, so I jumped on last night, and it was interesting. I don't know whether you know him. His tagline's Albert something or other, young guy. He was speaking in I think it was a libertarian. I got onto his feed because he came on. I got asked about, again on our list tonight, about housing affordability. And that's one of the areas I don't know a lot about. You know, so I've got ideas, but I'm no expert in it. the guy who was running it, he knew me, obviously, knew me by name. So he's quite keen to get me on and have an opinion. So it just took me back a little bit, because straight away, as soon as I became visible and I was there ready to speak, bang, I was shoved to the front of the queue. So you'd gone off by this stage. And the first question it gave me was about housing affordability. And they must not get many boomers on there because they were quite keen to find out the perspective from a boomer. So I gave my perspective, and then this young fella gets on. And then last night I found out Gen Z are now Zoomers, so I'm catching up. So anyway, he's got on there, mate, and talk about having a rip. I mean, I've got, you rude little bastard. So I've invited him on the podcast and said, if you want to have a rip, do it to my face. Come on the podcast and let's chat it out. But he's got on, he's accused me of being a Jew, crap about my foreskin. I don't know why that was anything. I'm a good Catholic boy, so my mum got rid of that quite a lot. Yeah, and then he was going on to me.
It's all getting a bit
nuts.
Getting a bit confused, I think.
He wants to, in his opinion, it was interesting, and the guy from One Nation was also interesting. I'm not too sure how much thought they put in. I'm no expert, but the young fella, the Groiper, or the NSN guy, he wants to take away all the property when they get in power from all the boomers. Basically, the guys have built their property, own their property, wants to go and snatch it away, and we're going to make you pay for what you've done. I'm going, one, I'm a renter, so I don't know what I've done. Number two, that's just a bit silly. You're not going to get in power on the thing. And the other guy from One Nation, he wants to drop property prices. And I'm going, how are you going to achieve that? I mean, I don't mind you. We got to address housing affordability, but by taking we're basically talking about becoming a communist country. So
look, it's interesting, and I'm happy to talk to that about.
Good
ideas, because I actually agree housing prices need to fall, but I won't kind of go into it until we've got the opportunity on the actual stream. But I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's a game of pass the parcel, and someone's got to be holding the parcel when the music stops, and the music will at some point stop.
Of course it will.
It's a question of whether you do that in a controlled, organised way where you are actually pulling levers to bring that about, or whether it happens when the elastic band finally snaps and the bubble bursts, and that's going to be blood in the streets. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So, I'm happy to talk about it. Happy to talk about like the housing affordability thing of like why prices are so high. Talk about like how I think they could come down. I'm happy to talk about
Beautiful. Mate, I'll give you the floor on that one. So one thing, the way I do go about it, just so you know, I don't try to be a Piers Morgan or that, to try and interfere too much or talk over. I just try and let the conversation happen. There's no time restrictions. However long you want, we go. And when you're ready to finish up, we can finish up. So me and Scott Challen went for 2 hours. It was actually a really good conversation. So I didn't know whether we'd butt heads or whether we'd talk, but I don't want to debate some. There'll be things we, as you said in your post, we'll probably disagree on. Got a few questions about the Libertarian Party. So, but just give us a chance to everyone put their view forward. And even with this Groiper I'm inviting on, I want to give him a chance to try. I want to find out with these young ones why they're thinking the way they're thinking and what us older ones can do to convince them whether there's a better way or how we can help resolve it. So that's a lot of the way I want to go. Because as you can imagine, mate, I've coached a lot of Gen Z. So it was quite interesting to hear him come out. I think he's on the extreme end. If he's not on the extreme end, maybe the future of Australia's in a bit of trouble.
Look, I mean, and I'm happy as well. You flagged in the post. You maybe talk a little bit about my past, my story.
Is that all right?
Happy to talk about that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go into great detail. I just said.
No, okay. I'm happy to do that because I suppose your audience is probably not necessarily the same as mine, but so people might not have heard it before. That's what I'm saying. So. Yeah. I think you're a bit more well known than you probably give yourself credit for. But anyway, we're getting very close to the time. Just give me a tick. I'm going to figure out. For some reason, this software I use, the Restream, it keeps changing its format on the background dashboard. So usually I have a dual screen, but there's no dual screen. Yeah, right, okay.
So I'm just trying. All I've got is this stupid. Maybe all I do is just remove this. Let's see. Here we go. I've got it.
There we go.
There we go. That's better. Oh, this one would be even better. Okay, now we're good. So we'll go live in a couple of minutes. What else is news, mate? Were you engaged at one stage? Is that right? Did I read that?
So I was actually married, and yeah, that doesn't look like it's going to continue moving forward. No. So
that's disappointing for you, mate.
Oh, look, it is and isn't. I think sometimes you're better off to learn these things before there's kids in the picture and all that sort of stuff.
No, that's definitely true.
Fundamentally, she was 22 when we met. I was 30. I was the first long-term relationship she'd ever been in, and my life looked pretty different when we met to what it does now. It looked like my life was going to be a sort of a smaller life, like a good life, but very, very more limited than what it's turned out to be. So, yeah, she's just that sort of person that she's on cruise control and sort of wants to, chill out. And that's never going to be me.
So, no, I think that's probably the problem with our politics generally. I think a lot of Australians, but we get in this bubble, and this, X Spaces last night was obviously that bubble. But I'm lucky I get out of my bubble a lot. I'm not quite as involved in politics as what you are, so I have my streams and opinions and all that sort of thing. But, then I get out through my work, and it gets me in the, what I would say, the real world, the real bubble, where I'm meeting other people from outside that. Mm-hmm. And most people just want to get on with their life. They know the problem's there, but they want the politicians to fix them. Until life gets that bad, which is what you're talking about with that rubber breaking a little bit, it's going to be really interesting out of what happened last week, where the country goes. That's something obviously we've got to chat about. So, mate, I've written a long list here for you, so we might just have.
That's good. It's good. I'm happy to take shoes.
Oh, he's in the shorts. He has been at the gym.
Yeah, mate. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is gold. Better than me. I'm in the shorts, but I'll show you my legs.
I've basically got two kind of modes. I'm either in full suit, 2-3 piece, or I'm in gym clothes. That's pretty much the.
You at times you look very James Bond, I've got to say.
I try to manifest a Clark Kent kind of energy, where I'm like a mild-mannered lawyer by day and then libertarian superhero by night.
Mate, what were you at something? You were at I think it was some libertarian function, and you had I was very impressed. You had a strength. You had to prove your strength. Was it the hammer thing? Or?
Oh yeah. So that was during the campaign. There was it was like a show in the northern suburbs, and that was one of the things they had was this stone thing. You had to sort of like lift the stone with the sword hilt. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Actually, that was I wasn't expecting it to do it, and I thought it did pretty well, all things considered.
You did.
It'd be nice if our politicians took a bit better care of themselves and kind of like, led by example, I think, a bit as well. So,
yeah, I can imagine. Hey, mate, we better get started because we've got 42 viewers and we're babbling on like an old pair. So let me do an introduction for everyone.
Yeah, and honestly, just before we jump live, like it is awesome to see you, and I appreciate some of the chats we had through the election and just some of the more not to do with politics, just life stuff is, it's a good thing, and I think I appreciate that you sort of I think you take a bit of a mentoring kind of shine to me, and I appreciate that. So
thank you, mate. But I hate to tell you this, but because of my sometimes lack of technology when it comes to these things, we've been live.
Right, okay. Well, very good. That's excellent.
We get on with it. So, but I appreciate those kind words, mate. And no matter the politics where we agree, I think. The one thing John Howard used to say, there's more that unites us than divides us. And I certainly think that applies with us. So let's get straight into it. To everyone who's watching, with no further ado, me and Jordan have been chatting here really happily for the last half an hour. Jordan, if you don't know Jordan, he's got an amazing backstory. We'll get into that, but he's part of the Libertarian Party. He stood at the last election for the federal Senate. I'm not too sure what he's doing for the Vic election. I'm hoping he's going to stand, but I do know he's looking to join the executive for the Libertarian Party for Victoria. I think that would be a great thing for him to do. We'll get into politics. We'll get into the Libertarians. Jordan is got an amazing background, but he's also a very smart man. And we'll touch on that as we go. If you're watching and you want to get into the questions, send them through. We'll try and get to those questions as best we can. If you're asking ridiculous questions or you're being abusive, we won't get it up. We want a good conversation. For those who might be a bit precious about words, heads up, I drop a few bombs from time to time. I try not to, but I'm no angel. So, and I'm sure, Jordan, we want to get into a really good conversation. So, Jordan, welcome aboard.
It's good to be here.
Good. The Eureka Conservative. For those who don't know, and you're a first-time viewer, we call it the Eureka Conservative. I've evolved that from the Conservative to the Eureka Conservative because to be a Conservative now, you've sort of got to be a rebel. So what was the most famous rebellion in Australia? That was the Eureka Stockade. So
yes, my hometown where I grew up in Ballarat. And,
in Ballarat,
I
really?
used to live just around the corner from the Eureka Stockade. I'd pass it on my morning run every morning. So,
yeah, it's an amazing little site. We went when I coached my teams. We played in the Ballarat tournament up there for junior basketball. So I spent a bit of time up there in the last 4 or 5 years. I've had a good look around. So I actually love the city because of the older buildings. I love anything that reaches back in time a little bit, and you can draw on our history and our heritage. And I think Ballarat is full of that. So if you haven't been to Ballarat, I suggest you make the effort. Who's the member there? It's a Labor member,
Catherine King for federal, and then there's a couple of Labor for state. There's a Eureka and Wendouree are 2 seats in Ballarat. So, but the Labor state MPs, there's not much point remembering their name because they're just like an NPC with a number. You know, they don't really have a personality, unfortunately. But no, Ballarat, definitely visit if you can. Get to Sovereign Hill, Crowell Castle, but do it over the next couple of months because it's the 3 or 4 months of the year where it's not like Soviet winter. Every other, autumn, winter, spring, bring 4 different changes of clothing and an umbrella. Yeah, I actually like the at Ballarat. I like the lake there with the botanical gardens. Yeah, Lake Wendouree.
Magnificent. And then they've got that, which I never knew about till I visited, that pathway where they've got the what do they call them? Not the statues, the head thing of all the prime ministers.
Yeah, and they've got
the bust.
Yeah.
And they got the old tram there. I take my dog with me every time. He loves that because you've got all the geese and things. He's never seen it before.
So there's actually a bust of William Wallace at the Ballarat Botanical Gardens.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because there was a lot of Scottish settlers and miners in the early days. You can tell from the names they've got Scotsman's Lead, and they've got a whole bunch of other sort of very Scottish names. So yeah, lots of Celtic, Scottish and Irish descendants in Ballarat. You can tell just walking around the lake. There's a lot of redheads. So
there's a bit more rebellion than just the Eureka Stockade if they've got William Wallace there. Then, so mate, a lot of Ballarat people should like. I don't know whether you know or anyone else watching. Is one of the things we do on the Eureka Conservative podcast is we put it up policy. So some of the policy. One of the reasons I do it is I look at some of the policy our governments and people put forward and go, surely it can't be that difficult. Now, I know the intricacies behind it probably are, and you would know that far better being a lawyer, but you've still got to get some common sense.
Not yet admitted to legal practice, so I have to always correct that. So I'm a law graduate, not a lawyer at this stage. But
how far away till you're a lawyer?
Hopefully very soon, I think early next year should be the final steps. So.
Well, let's hold that one because that's part of your background story. So we'll get to that in a tick. But one of my things that any rebel would like is I think we need personally, which we'll get into later, I think we need to become a republic. And I think that Constitution, Bill of Rights and all that's got to be written by centre-right people such as yourself who embrace liberties in our way of life. And all our liberties and values are under attack now for the wrong reasons. And I think the only way to fix it, in my point of view, is my analogy is to tear it down and start again and give us something better. But that's a bit of a provocative thing. Some people like it, some people don't. We'll get into that later. Without any ado, mate, let's have a bit of a story on your background. I'll give you the floor to give us a bit of your background and why you're a libertarian.
Yeah, well, I think I sort of grew up a pretty practical libertarian. My mum and dad still live where I grew up in a little place called Baringa, which is about half an hour south of Ballarat. And they're on 20 acres out there. And that's pretty small for the kind of area it is. And basically southwest and east of mum and dad's place. They're the last rural residential lot, and then farmland as far as the eye can see through the Golden Plains and down to Mount Elephant. And where they are is right in the hinterlands. You've got the Enfield State Forest, sort of comes down, and you've got this beautiful valley, Moonlight Valley, where mum and dad are, and then it goes down onto the Golden Plains. So you've sort of got this beautiful hinterland where they are. And when you're a teenager in that kind of environment, you think that you want to go to the city, and you think that it's the worst place to live in the world, in the middle of nowhere, and why would anyone want to live out here? And then when you get a bit older and you realize what the world's like outside that, you think, no, they've got the right idea. It's an amazing part of the world, and I was very, very lucky to grow up in that environment. So I'm the oldest of three boys, and we were parented in the school of the doors closed, dinners at lunches at 1, dinners at 8. What you do between those hours is a matter for you, and basically don't come crying to us about problems, sort of yourself. We didn't have to be told to watch out for snakes or not trip in rabbit holes or whatever, because we worked that out ourselves, and it was a pretty idyllic childhood. Like, it was really, we used to just go on massive adventures, and we used to build forts, and we used to just be free range, and it was incredible.
What decade was that?
So that was so I'm 88. So basically my childhood was sort of through the 90s, basically. And my two younger brothers and I, we were sort of like little three musketeers, we'd be doing everything together. And and they would sort of like, I'd read them, stories before bed and stuff. And, like I read them The Hobbits and Lord of the Rings and whatever. I was sort of always, I was always pretty nerdy as a kid. I was pretty bookish and kind of very much like a, sort of child philosopher. I'd sort of walk up to adults as a kid and just start talking about adult stuff. And my parents were just like, I was one out of the box. I'm not quite sure they knew really what to do with me. But I think that I always had that, feeling of you got to be responsible for your own life. And I was lucky to have an upbringing that kind of facilitated that. But, it wasn't all rosy and stuff as well, because within me, and I guess my nature as well, is a bit of an addictive tendency. I'm very sort of fixate on what I'm interested in, and I'm very sort of, single-minded in my pursuit of what I want to do. And, whatever my priorities are at the time, I sort of tend to throw myself into. And those can all be great traits when they're channeled properly and with a bit more age and experience and hard-earned lessons. But when I was younger, as a lot of young men in particular do, I sort of really struggled to find my place in the world. And I always sort of had older friends, and I sort of wanted to be faster and louder and, have more of a drink than them, and I sort of wanted to fit in and prove myself. And I just ended up developing a really unhealthy relationship, first with alcohol. Like, that was the first sort of problem for me. And that wasn't helped by my first job out of high school being in the army, because the army is a very, very strong drinking culture. It's almost like an institutionalized sort of alcohol culture. And and then the army was very structured, so there wasn't kind of like the availability of recreational drugs. But then when I finished up with the army, I sort of dropped out about 18 months in, because it turns out being a libertarian living away from home for the first time, doing your first job as the army, isn't a great combination. That they sort of, my instructors always used to joke that I'd either drop out, which I did, or I'd end up being the chief of defence. So, because before me, the record for like the most disciplinary restriction of privileges was Peter Cosgrove. So,
oh my God.
But then after the army, I sort of got into hospitality, working bars and nightclubs and stuff. And unfortunately, that's where I sort of really fell into the recreational drug use. And when I say that, I'm not really saying there was anything ever really recreational about it. Again, as with everything, I sort of just, I was off, and I really, really sort of, just for the next 7 or 8 years, really struggled with just periods of things would be good, and then sort of I'd relapse into addiction. And during a fairly lengthy period of like 2 or 3 years of not using and kind of being on the up, I basically bought a travel agency business. And things weren't right. I was very sort of, I wanted to run before I could walk, and I had all these kind of delusions of, being this next would be Lord of the Universe, and I wanted to be a small business owner, but I didn't want to do a lot of the really hard, grindy work that is involved in making that work. And I didn't listen to a lot of people who were trying to give me good advice, and then the sort of drugs and alcohol came back into it as well. And in the end, my business failed with people being owed money when the doors closed, and I ended up doing 27 months in prison for charges relating to that, and also relating to basically drug trafficking and drug-related offences while I was on bail. So my life really unravelled pretty spectacularly in 2015 on a fairly public stage. I was on, front cover of the Herald Sun and Crime Stoppers, and just all the, it was just a mess. Like, it was a real mess.
Yeah.
And I think that I was a bit of a man on fire. I said not long after I went to prison that it really saved me, because I think if I hadn't gone to prison when I did, I probably would be dead. And prison was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because it was a circuit breaker. It sort of sobered me out physically, but also gave me time to really mentally think about what led me there. Gave me time to process and kind of become aware of a lot of consequences for people close to me and my loved ones, like mum and dad, my brothers in the community, all that sort of stuff. It really hit home and, made me realize that it wasn't just me and my consequences, because I think a lot of young men think that it doesn't matter what they do because they're prepared to pay to play, and, they'll roll the dice and they think it's just them that pays the price, but often that's not the case. And so 7th of July 2015 was my last drink of alcohol and use of drugs, and I'm now 10 and a half years in recovery, which is pretty incredible, and I am really proud of that. And life's not always easy. There's times when life is hard and setbacks happen and stress and pressure and all that other stuff, but these days I know that nothing can ever be that bad, that's the solution to it. So and basically while I was away, I started to set goals for myself. I started to get into the gym. Like, believe it or not, when I went to prison, my whole arm was probably the width of my wrist up to my shoulder. Like, I was 65 kilos, dripping wet. And, I was just, I'd never sort of taken care of what I ate or put in my body, or, physical fitness. I'd never done any of that stuff, because I sort of didn't really believe I deserved it. That's what I realize now. Like, I really sort of was quite self-sabotaging and self-harming a lot of the time. And so I started to get my body right. I started to get my mind right. I started to set goals. And I did the first half of a business degree while I was in prison, and I finished that while I was on parole. And when I got out of prison, I basically worked for the Beechworth Bakery for about 6 years. They were a fantastic company. They gave me a shot, with full disclosure of my past. I basically walked in when I got out, and when I finished my intensive parole the first 3 months after I got out, and sort of said, this is what's happened. I'm looking for gainful employment. I want to try to turn my life around. And, I'm happy to start, mopping floors and doing dishes or whatever. Like, I don't need to be doing anything sophisticated. And they said, come back next week and we'll give you an interview. So, that was amazing, because I really felt like I was painting a target on myself and, sort of setting myself up to fail by sharing that. But they actually responded to that with giving me a chance. And I did start doing the really basic jobs, and then I worked my way up to serving on the register, and then I did the baking and decorating, and then I ended up managing the Beechworth Bakery in Bendigo for about 4.5 years, and then managed the bakery in Ballarat for another year at the end of that. And when COVID hit, my partner at the time was getting a bit sick of me because I was home more, because I had basically I was just driving her mental. She goes, "You need to find something to do." She goes, "You're driving me crazy." So I ended up going back to uni and studying postgraduate law. So because I did 6 months of law after the army before I got really sidetracked on the drugs, and I really enjoyed it. I did really well when I was there and when I applied myself. But it's a bit like if you've seen that meme on the internet where the car's going down the highway and then there's the off ramp. The off ramp's something bad, and that was kind of me, making the hard right turn. And I sort of wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And at the start, it wasn't with a thought to ever work in law or, potentially to be admitted to practice. That was something that was just, I assumed it wasn't possible. It really started as just a proving to myself and kind of unfinished business. And then as I made my way through the degree, I met people in the profession, and I met teachers and people in the university who really encouraged me and said, actually, it's not that black and white. There is a pathway. It's not a sure thing. In fact, it's a very not sure thing. But, they will look at things holistically, and they'll sort of say not only what happened, but what did you learn from it? And, what are you going to be doing going forward? And I ended up studying that law degree full-time while I was managing the bakery full-time. So I basically full-time study, full-time management work. And I graduated the Juris Doctor in 2023 with the highest mark for that year at the whole university for the law degree. And I just threw myself into everything, and I just did all the extracurriculars, and I did all the moots and advocacy, and all the basically everything I could possibly do, both because I loved it and because I felt like I had to be the law student, not just a law student. I felt like I had to kind of compensate for what I perceived as my baggage. And that was, and then in December last year, so this time last year basically, or a few weeks before this time last year, I went before the Legal Admissions Board, and it was an hour and a half basically getting cross-examined by a retired Supreme Court judge and 4 senior counsel. So it was pretty savage. Like, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I remember thinking, God, they're like picking me apart atom by atom. It was just like I was getting taken apart and then put back together again. And then they took about half an hour to deliberate. And then when I came back in, they said, we want to commend you on turning your life around, and we think you're going to make a great contribution to the profession. So there's still a little bit of that journey to go. It's a bit more complicated a process. And hopefully at some point soon in the new year, I'll be able to sign the Supreme Court role and be an admitted legal practitioner. But
in the Supreme Court, is that it? Is that where you practice your law?
So that would be essentially, then I'm able to get a practicing certificate and work as a lawyer, or I might sit the bar exam and seek to go to the bar. I'm not 100% sure yet what will happen.
Yeah.
But sort of alongside that journey, I got back involved in politics sort of during COVID. I was a card-carrying member of the Liberal Democrats, as they were then. That was actually one of the first things I did when I got out of prison. When you're in prison, you get 20% of your prison wage, you get put aside. So when you get out, you get basically given this. It used to be a check. I think it actually was a check. They give you what's called a withholding check, and mine was about, I think, $500 or $600 or something from the 27 months I was away. And one of the things that I did with that money, I actually bought a concession membership for the Liberal Democrats, because I'd been in prison and I'd been watching. I watched Trump get elected in 2016. I actually won $50 in a bet in the prison yard, Trump winning.
Mate, I did not in a prison yard, but I won a $50 bet on Trump winning as well.
Yeah, in 2016.
There you go.
Pretty good. That's pretty good. This old armed robber. He goes, nah, Trump's not going to win. He's not like one of the lizard people. He's not, he's not sort of in the system, whatever. And I'm like, all right, let's put $50 on it, and he paid me. So, but I was watching. I was watching politics unfold almost from outside the world. And I was watching people that I knew, like James Patterson and Tim Wilson, those kind of people who were my cohort of young liberals that, I knew personally, and they were sort of my friends. They were getting elected. And I kind of realized that I'd dodged a bullet, because I think if I had not had the experiences I had and gone to prison, I think I could have ended up being a really entitled, sort of not very well-rounded, or sort of real, like experienced reality sort of person. I think I would have been one of those really sort of silver spoon, everything that's wrong with the Liberal Party now. I think that probably would have been my fate. So I actually think it was like a bit of a bullet dodge, and being away from the world kind of made me realize what was important to me and what my values were, and what I needed to do to make amends for what I'd done. So I went to prison and I had my sentence imposed and stuff, but I'm also ongoing repaying the people that were harmed by my offending. So the people that lost money and that I basically stole from in my travel business, I've repaid about 16% of that amount so far. And that's over and above, that's nobody's compelling that, nobody's garnishing that off my wage. That's voluntary repayments I've made over the last sort of 8 years or so. Because for me and my values as a libertarian, and if you harm someone and if you violate that principle, then the correct action, the thing that should happen is that those people are made whole and repaid. And the state doesn't do that. The government doesn't swoop in and save the day. They just punish someone on other people's behalf, but actually it doesn't really help them. So, and that's really let me walk down the street with my head up and not looking over my shoulder. And it, as you saw through the federal election, allowed me to sort of run for public office and sort of put my head above the trench. And there's always going to be people who don't believe that things can change.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people who are going to throw stones or throw grenades, because they don't want to get off the couch and do something themselves, and they sort of need to tear someone down who is trying. But yeah, it's for me, I realized that I wanted to be a part of a political movement that would let me.
May I interject there on you before? Because I think there's a dividing line for you. And for those watching, I've heard Jordan's story before. And the more I hear it, the more amazed I get by it. But I think there's got to be a bit of a tribute, mate, for that 180. That is a real forget the knockers, forget the haters. You're going to have them. God knows I've had them. And the one thing you don't have to worry about is the haters. I mean, every single person on this planet, and if I remember rightly from our conversation, you're not necessarily a person of faith, but I've got no doubt that someone in your life has been praying pretty hard for you. That's a lot of people would have gone down the path you went, and that would have been the end of them. The fact that you could stand up, and I've had a lot of kids I've coached that have done similar things to similar things, not in your journey, but they've had to face adversity, overcome it, and then come back better. And I think that's one of the beautiful things I love about sport. I've got to continually teach my kids, hey, you're going to get knocked down. The only time you fail is when you don't get back up.
Yes.
And look at the way you've gotten back up. That, mate, you've got to write a book. Yeah, I mean, that's where, in my opinion, that is worthy of a film, that story. And that's before we even get onto the politics. But, mate, full credit to you. And the fact, I got a quick question. Do you actually, I don't know whether you already do it, or do you aspire, if you don't do it, do you aspire to, for example, one of the big things about the Gospels for me, I'm a Christian, so one of the things that resonates through me in the Bible, it talks about, well, when you treated me like this, they were talking about how you get into heaven. And Jesus said to these disciples, well, when you treat me like this, this, and this, you're going to sacrifice your chance of getting with me in heaven. But when you treat me like this, this, and this, you'll make it. And one of the things he put in there, when you visit me in prison, and he turned around and said, well, Jesus, you've never gone to prison. He goes, well, when you visit one of my children who are in prison, you're visiting me. So I'm just curious, and I think that is a great part of the gospel, a great part of teaching, that just because a person goes inside, that's not the end of their time. We can have a debate on certain crimes, for example, but you've recognised your faults, you've changed those faults. Like you said, it's interesting that going to jail was what you needed to turn your life around. But not only actually have you done your time, you're now trying to rectify the harm you've caused on others. Not everyone would do that.
Yeah, so, and there's also actually more recently sort of an additional footnote to that story, which is that I've been going into prison and
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so I've actually been lucky enough to be part of the lived experience employment panel program, and I've been going into. I actually went into the prison that I spent 18 months at the other day through the front door. It was a crazy experience, I tell you. Like, it was really, really. It was. I'm getting like shivers. My hair's standing on end as I'm talking about it, because it was so strange going through the front door, getting a pass, a visitor's pass, and whatever, and then walking in, and it was like. It was. I've never had this experience before, because I remember being in that environment from that side. It was almost like when I walked in through the gate and actually into the, prison itself, and I was looking up at where I used to be. It was like I could see myself. It was this really strange. It was like two worlds kind of meshing together because it was previously separate. Like it was like a bubble that I was in, then the outside, and then me coming in through the door. It was like I was watching myself from their eyes. It was a really I've never had that experience before in my life, and it was so powerful. And getting to share with guys still inside that, it's going to be hard, and a lot of people are going to expect you to fail, and sometimes succeeding is just not going backwards. Sometimes it's just like you say, it's just getting back up. It's just not making the same mistakes, and that's a win. You know what I mean? To start with, like, especially when, I was in a position where, probably with the exception of my mum, because, mums will always believe in you and be there for you and sort of be your biggest supporter. But I don't think really anyone expected. I didn't even expect anything of myself. Like, there was almost no pressure in a weird way, but also it was like, I had this opportunity to decide who I was going to be, which a lot of people, I don't think, get that opportunity, especially in the modern world. Like the 27 months I was away, I felt like it was a very monastic experience. Like I basically was outside the world looking in to the world from this place, and I was able to switch off from technology. Like I think now being back so connected on it, I really actually think of that time as some of the best time of my life, because I didn't have the constant. When I got out of prison, I remember watching people how absorbed in their phones they were and not interacting with each other, and it was really strange. It's faded now because now I'm terrible with it. Like I live on my phone, but at the time it was a real eye opener, and I'm glad I had that experience. But I think that. And the other thing I'm doing too is not just going in and visiting guys who are still inside as prisoners, but I'm actually helping train new prison officers.
Oh,
so they actually have myself and a couple of others go into it's about week 6 of their training program, and we speak to them about case management, about what it's like from our point of view, what helped us, what didn't help, all that sort of stuff. So it's still to be going into prison and getting paid by corrections to go through the door. It's my life today, there's still a lot of hurdles to overcome and a lot of goals that haven't been realized yet. But when I think back what I thought my life was going to look like 10 years ago, if you had told me it was going to look like this, I'm still pinching myself. I feel incredibly grateful, honestly. And I can't really have a bad day. Like 2025 was not a great year in some ways, but I've had years that are much worse. And even through COVID, people were saying, "Oh, COVID's like being in prison." I'm like, "No, it's not. I can tell you."
Well, I was going to say, and it's whether you want to call it faith, fate, whatever it is. Just listening to that, in a funny way, your time in prison actually probably set you up for your biggest success.
Oh no, it absolutely did.
Got inside your head.
Absolutely did.
And then when you came into COVID and you were again within 4 walls, my problem in COVID.
I knew what to do.
Yes.
Like I had the skill set. I never thought I would use that skill set again, and it's probably pretty horrific that I had to. But I knew what I had to do to get myself through that time and give myself purpose.
And look what it set you up for now. Mate, like I said, you've got to write a book one day when you get a chance. I think it's an amazing story. I think, I was talking for those who are watching to Jordan about my experience last night with a Gen Z kid. And I just think my comment after you because Jordan was on this space and I jumped on it, whether it was smart or not. But one of the things I said, which I'm sick of our politics, or we'll sort of segue in here into the politics, is one thing I'm getting sick of watching politics across the globe, in America and Australia and Europe, is it always seems to be the best politicians, I think, give us hope, right? That there can always be a better day. Your story is something that I think can, not just people inside. I had, as an example, there was a young guy who got himself through a similar issue. He was into drugs and all that. He didn't go to jail, but he nearly lost his job, his wife, his family. He was telling me about how he got off it, and there were similar stories that he read up, and he just went pretty much cold turkey because he knew what he had to lose. And he also had lost a brother to suicide as well. So he had those black demons. He had it was a terrible thing to go to, but he didn't want to put his family, like what you were talking about, through the similar things that his brother had done. And his story was a great turnaround story. We've got to have those for the Gen Zs who are just starting out in life, for God's sakes. We've got to find a way to give them some hope moving forward. And hopefully in the political conversation we're about to have, that is something. Yours is a story of hope, mate.
Do you know what it
amazing.
is? It's the hero's journey. And I think that is the antithesis of the woke intersectionalist ideology, because it's an ideology of resentment. It's an ideology of powerlessness. It's an ideology that tells people the system is to blame. You can't change the system. So you are powerless as an individual. You have to join our cause and change the system through our worldview. And fundamentally, that's a message of envy and resentment and powerlessness that I think Jordan Peterson probably was the first real mainstream voice to name it and to give people that sense of direction. But I think I've spoken to a few people about this. He kind of I feel as though he was really good at identifying it and naming it, but then he didn't give that call to action of what to do about it. And he couldn't be that, because he obviously had a lot of his own demons as well. And now I think he's kind of fallen into this echo chamber trap where he's sort of like a caricature of himself. And unfortunately, where he kind of left off, the Andrew Tates of the world and stuff kind of picked up when all these young men were looking for a way forward of okay, we know we need to reclaim our healthy, positive masculinity, all that sort of stuff. And then unfortunately, I think there were some voices that kind of became pretty loud and prominent in the aftermath of that. I think you're right. I think the way you're describing Gen Z and beyond is, I think that they're looking for a purpose, a sense of where they fit in the world. And I think that, to the extent that my story can perhaps help them see how they can get through what might seem like a hopeless situation. And also too, for me, a lot of it was about realizing that I do really well in structured environments. I do really well in organization. But if I didn't do anything to change what was happening, I'd always find myself ending up in environments that impose that discipline on me, whether it be the army, whether it be prison, whether it be a relationship that's quite, rigid and controlling. So what I realized was I had to have self-discipline, that I had to impose structure and organization on myself. Like that thing Jordan Peterson says, make your bed. You can't see it, it's just off screen, but this whiteboard, it's like a teacher's double-sided whiteboard. I've actually got two. And it's crazy. My parents Dad makes fun of me. He goes, is it on the whiteboard? He sort of teases me. But it works for me. And just the self-discipline of, working out in the gym 5 days a week, being structured with my eating, and just, it's those things that when I was in the army, I always remember this guy, the warrant officer Driscoll, he said to me, self-discipline and character is what you do when no one's watching. It's like what you do,
right.
It's what you impose on yourself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready to understand it then. And I didn't. And then much later when I was in other environments and situations, it made sense to me. And I realized that what it was about, that even when you don't know what the plan is, or you don't know what's happening, or you're in an environment of uncertainty or struggle or whatever, you can control your own mind and your own actions, and you can make your environment tidy. You can set goals and move through time in an intentional way. And if you're sort of, I suppose, relying on the outside world to make sense, or blaming others for why you can't have something, then you're really setting yourself up to be resentful and unhappy. And I feel like that's where a lot of people, young people, are, and not in an unjustified way. The world is pretty terrible, and it's sad that there might be an analog or a comparison between learning how to survive in prison, thrive in prison, and navigating our daily life in Victoria. But I think there probably is much more in common than what there should be.
Yeah, I'd agree. But no, you should. I don't know what your future's got in hold. Obviously, going to be a lot of that, but just listening to what you said then, that thing about basically being true to yourself even when other people aren't watching and sticking to your disciplines. Mate, I'm stealing that for my kids in sport. That's brilliant. But you should, this is a serious thought bubble as I'm thinking, you should, the way you speak and then the story you got to tell and the inspiration you can provide, I actually think you should also go into a bit of self-motivation. I'm not talking Anthony Robbins, but why not? You'd make a lot of money. But the amount of lives you could impact just with your story and the way you've turned it around and what you've just said then, even outside of politics, I think it could be amazing. And look, we don't bump heads, but we have, for example, which we'll start on in a tick again, our disagreements on politics. But I don't know whether you saw it. With my politics, and David Limbrick, your mate, he made me realise this. There's no person in politics I've probably at the current moment got more time for than David Limbrick. The first thing I look for any politician is some integrity. Do they have a passion for this country? Are they in it for the right reasons? Do they have the values that I could live with as a leader, for example? And when I look at the Victorian Parliament, the person that resonates with me, for example, is David Limbrick. Forget that he's a libertarian. I don't care. I'm looking at the human. And you're very much his understudy, and you're sort of Batman and Robin a little bit. I think it's a great team. But I actually I was on the verge of writing, I wrote an email to all the federal Liberal Party MPs and national, and basically told them what I thought they needed to do to turn it around for the sake of this country. And I was on the verge of writing something to all the Liberal Party members for the state party because they had Brad Batten in there, and love him or hate him, I just felt, you got to get behind this guy. And then they got rid of him. And I said, but if you can't get behind Brad Batten, I said, the best thing you could do to all the conservatives within that Liberal Party, not the woke moderate lot, is this. I said, if I was in your position, I would grab someone that would resonate with the Victorian Committee, and I would be bold. I would approach David Limbrick, offer him a safe seat in the lower house, and ask him to be the leader of the Liberal Party, and you come to a compromise of values. And I said, because I think David, when he went out there, would absolutely beat the shit out of Jacinta Allen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he would definitely run rings around. And the truth is, they're a little bit scared of us, which they should be. But it's actually because David always does what he says he's going to do when it comes to like the votes. They always know what his position's going to be. You know what I mean? And he's going to stick by it. And it can't be bought and sold. You see a lot of these other, and it's a vexed topic sometimes because people get so tribal about things. But the other day, for example, Ricky Lee from One Nation voted in support of this new increase in pet tax and car parking tax, all this sort of stuff. I have no idea what deal was done in the background to get that vote, but it's unacceptable. It's just, and I feel as though, and I'm sure we can come to this shortly, I think where I've kind of landed on minor party politics a little bit is that I think One Nation, it seems, will ride this surge of discontentment because they're known, because they're so visible, and people go, right, I'm not happy, I want to protest on the right. One Nation's getting that vote, for want of a better word, placed with them. I actually think, and you've been around politics long enough to remember this time, a lot of people that, because I was a weird kid, I was interested in politics when I was like 19. Most people would be into sport and stuff like that. Politics has always been my sport. But if you remember the Australian Democrats, they were keep the bastards honest, protest. And then when they got in the position where they're in the balance of power and they did a deal to put through the GST, they got destroyed. Yeah. And I think One Nation has that in their future, in their not too distant future. Because Pauline sort of has almost consciously preferred to keep it on a simmer rather than a boil, the pot. She's actually maintained it so it's almost a bit of a Ponzi pyramid scheme where it sort of just lets her be in a Senate job and sort of funnels electoral funding back to Queensland, all that sort of stuff. But the wave that's coming, almost regardless of what she wants, is going to propel them to a place where they're actually going to be in a position where they will be the deciding vote probably in a future government, future parliament. Yeah. And I reckon they're going to fail that test pretty spectacularly.
You could be right. I've got I came out this way. Look, I jumped on the One Nation bandwagon a little bit. I'm not like others, as you probably well know. I don't put my hat in anybody's ring. The actually only party I've ever done that with is with the Libertarians when they were the Liberal Democrats. Yep. That's when David come on to a live stream during COVID, and he explained, and this is why I like David so much, right? He explained the difference. I asked him a question, and he explained clearly the difference between being conservative and libertarians, and said if you want to be a conservative, you can live under the libertarian tent. But some people can't be. Basically, the way I said it, if you're a conservative and you're uncomfortable living under that libertarian tent, you probably should just be conservative. And I actually went away from that, and it was just, so you can blame David for this. I went away from that thought long and hard, and I thought, yeah, actually, my true values are conservative. It's not libertarian. So I'm being untrue to myself by going under that tent. That doesn't mean I can't respect people in other political parties.
And I think there's probably 70, 80% of things that we would be side by side on barricades. Probably more.
Probably 90%. And we'll get to this later on. This will be some of the harder questions you'll get later. Is I do think there's differences between each state and the Libertarian Party, because I definitely go from person to person. And I think the Victorian Liberty, you, David Limbrick, and Tim Quilty, you weren't around initially when I jumped on the Libertarian thing. A lot of people think I'm anti-Libertarian. I've actually voted Libertarian up until the last election for the last decade.
Yeah, and look, I have always coded your vocal observations. It's not even really criticism. It's the sort of feedback someone who really cares and wants success or wants something to live up to its better angels. Like I often have to explain to people who might just occasionally see your stuff and not really sort of look at it holistically. Some people go like, he's always attacking, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's more like, if you see someone you want to do well, then you obviously feel strongly about it. So,
well, my team it's pretty simple. It's Team Australia, and I want Australia to do well. I want the childhood that you had and the childhood I had for Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I mean, what you were describing then, I don't know whether it gets me. I was smiling. Your childhood was, and this is before the internet and all that, mate. With my parents, mum and dad, especially poor old mum, had to get us boys out of the house. Mate, we didn't read each other bedtime stories. We were fighting at bedtime. I mean, and I'm not talking pillow fights. We would actually fight. If you can imagine, we'd probably have 6 or 7 of the kids under the roof, because I was the second youngest, and the older brothers and sisters had gone off. They were more like uncles. But oh my God, my little brother used to like winding me up. My little older brother used to like dobbing me in. My next older brother was like a state swimmer who's built like a brick shit house. And every time my little brother went crying soon, I'd have to be contending with him coming and beating the crap out of me. And this went on every day. So mum had to get us out of the house. And our general rule, get out of the house like every other kid in that thing. We don't care what you do, but when the street lights are coming off, you've got to be home. Yeah. That was it. And you could go out, and we lived in the country like you did. I was born in Bensdale, very similar to Ballarat, beautiful place. But we were in Tassie there for a while. And mum and dad would let us go bush hiking. We'd come across tiger snakes. We'd come across kangaroos. It was the best childhood. And kids today, parents today won't let their kids out of their bubble for that element of risk. But we would never done half the things we used to do. And that developed that resilience that I think later generations, and I see this as a sports coach, they just don't have that resilience that you had, like when you went to prison, for example. That inner resilience, I can be better. You never know what you've got, I think, as an individual, until it's tested. Yeah. Can you dive deep inside and pull, which is what you've done, and pull yourself to a better spot? But mate, I hope everyone's who's watching has got a bit out of that, and I hope people would share it. There's certainly parts of this. If you're okay with it, I'd love to share with some of the boys I coach.
Yeah. Well.
So, and as they get older, mate, I would definitely, they're grade 6 at the moment, maybe in year 8, we'll get you down and you can have a chat and say, just be careful of these things, boys. Yeah. But I think that actually is personally, if I was your dad giving you advice, I'd be saying, mate, you should investigate that future. That doesn't mean you have to give up everything else, but I think you could be an amazing mentor for a lot of young men in particular. And unfortunately, that's where we're getting. So how about, buddy, we've talked a bit of politics. Let's start getting into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, so I think I was in this headspace when I got back into politics, where because politics had been kind of involved in all this kind of public, my life unraveling and whatever, I sort of, for a couple of years, I was just this card-carrying member, and I thought, is politics really healthy for me? Is it something I should be involved in? And I sort of make the joke that I was a bit like Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was like a hermit out in the desert, where I sort of had the lightsaber in the box and I wasn't really partaking and stuff. And then, through COVID, I sort of got pulled back into it. They said, do you want to start a Bendigo branch? And I said, look, I'm happy to do it with the caveat that I need to tell you a few things, and if you're comfortable with that. And they said, yep, no, we're all good. Nothing. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. And, and then I was on the federal executive for a couple of years and then ran for the Senate. And with regards to the state election, so I won't be a candidate. I can be, which I didn't think I could be for a long time. But the spent convictions legislation they brought in 2021, in March will be 10 years since my last conviction. And then I can basically apply to have those convictions spent. And once they're spent, then I can actually run for state parliament. So, so I would be able to. But the biggest thing I realised and learned when I was the Senate candidate is that, because the way I campaigned for the Senate was the way I learned to campaign in the Liberal Party. But back when the Liberal Party could actually campaign, this was many, many moons ago. They've lost that skill in many respects. But I was just sort of out there being the spearhead and campaigning relentlessly and stuff. And most people who followed that would have seen, it was like a pretty high tempo. But like in an army context, logistics is what wins campaigns and wars. And what I realised our party needs the most that I can help develop is that administrative, logistical back end support. Because once we get that right, and it might not be at this state election, it might not be the next federal election, but I think like local government is a huge opportunity for us. And I really think that's a real area where people are very receptive to libertarian messaging. There's a lot of really bad local laws and local issues. And some of these councils are just completely out of control. And
they're a breeding ground for ALP and Greens.
And I think that we can learn.
You guys in there.
We can learn from that and basically have that sustain us through this kind of difficult time for the right of politics. So, I think that's my mission, I think, over the next couple of years is to help sort of pull the party up by the bootstraps and, contribute the best way I can. But I think that's a really, sometimes you can get in politics where everyone has to be the star of the show and everyone has to be a chef and no one wants to be a Law and Order, sous chef. And I think that's, and like what I learned too from the Senate campaign is I think that probably for me, that kind of campaign I will probably return to after I have kids. I really want to have a family of my own because I now know what it takes and the kind of focus and attention it takes. And I think that, there's just some things I want to do before I return to that. But there's lots of other ways I can contribute.
Yeah. Mate, once you're not being critical, but I reckon once you have kids, it would take a very special person to stick with politics. I just and this is not a credit. This is all politicians. I just see, the amount of politicians who spend so much time away from their families. If you become, and I think you would be an amazing father, I think it would be a difficult thing to go into if you have a number of kids, depending on how many.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I say that I'm 37, and if there's kids in the next couple of years or whatever, if I go back into politics when I'm in my mid 50s, that's one benefit of having had so much experience so early. I think my star really just brightens over time. So.
You might be Australia's version of Donald Trump, mate. Have the kids.
Well, Donald Trump declared bankruptcy a couple of times, and that's how it is in America. In America, they have a different culture. They really expect people to try and fail, and they have a very different view of things. But who knows?
Perspective.
Who knows?
Right. Well, it was interesting going back to 2016. The guy I won my $50 bet off. He just thought I was nuts to back Trump. And I said, Lynn, my feel for it at the time, I said, and it's like what it is now. I said, people are over the major political parties. They're looking for something different. Trump provides something different. Oh, no, he can't beat Clinton. I said, Clinton's part of whatever you think about Clinton, she's part of the mob that have been in power for years. The two families, Clintons and Bushes, and then you had Barack Obama. She's part of that. What do they call it? You'd probably know this better than me. Well, the swamp is another word for it. But, the establishment. She's part of the establishment. Trump was coming from left field. That's what everyone – if the problem with Australian politics, and this is why I'd like to see a republic and a change in constitution, I think we deny – for example, let's say you have had your kids 20 years later, you're successful in law, and you've got some backers on there in the court. So this is a very big hypothetical. I'd see this as, and you might disagree here on this, I see this as an advantage of the American system. You can actually come from left field. You don't have to have the party behind you to nominate as the president. You need a support group, but you don't have to have this party room that you've always got to try and satisfy everyone. Once you become president, like Trump has done, you can recruit people from across the spectrum. And this is what my letter, for example, to the which I will still send to the Liberal Party is going to be, both nationally and at state level, is we're in a time, I think, as a country, we're in a sort of de facto war. There's so much in our society pulling against us. So what do you do when you actually go to a real war? You put in place a war cabinet. You pick the best people. It doesn't matter about their party background. You pick the best people. And that's why I said, get David Limbrick in charge of your party. That's what I put it on X a few things. I put, it was interesting. I got a funny response from David because I CC'd him on the tweet. You suggested as a punishment. No, I think he was actually pretty keen because actually the reason he made me think of it because he said if they actually asked me to be their treasurer, I'd be their treasurer.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because there was a point where Labor actually was like, "Oh, who's going to be treasurer?" And David's like, "I'll do the job," and I think he would be one of those people where either side of politics, whatever, if they put him in charge of it, he'd do a very good job. Like he was great with the inquiry into the Commonwealth Games. That was awesome, and he really played a straight bat, and he really. Didn't go over the top, didn't make it so that it could be framed as partisan. And he's very good like that. Like, I think that there's, and you've sort of suggested that I'm sort of an understudy to David. I think I'm a bit of a conceptual love child between John Ruddock and David Limbrick in some ways because I know that's a really concerning metaphor. We don't want to think of the visuals, but in terms of where I sit on things, I am someone who I probably am a bit more aggressive is not the right word, but I am a bit bolder with the way I speak and the sort of framing of things I take, but I am also quite considered. So I think that the right mix is somewhere in between those two. But yeah, have a great respect for David. I'm also very, very fond of John Ruddock. I know you have your reservations, or not even that. I don't think it's personal, but I understand your preferences differ. But
all right, we'll get on to him later.
Well, actually, just quickly on that. So in New South Wales, they are currently debating this terrible terrorism amendments omnibus bill that they've got where it's like, it's absolutely atrocious. It's terrible. One of the things I'm doing now for work is I do some work for the Free Speech Union, and we've done this big kind of summary of all the changes they're trying to push through. So one of the things that John Ruddock and his team have done, they've proposed 60 amendments to the bill, and they're going to try to debate all of them to try to filibuster to try to push it through to Christmas, which I think that's quite, like, it's funny, but it's also like one of the things you can do that.
And this is sort of, well, the other part I couldn't believe the other day is the standing ovation that Chris Mintz got. I mean, why? I mean, my bigger concern, we sort of moved on to that with all that tragedy, is, and I've got some really good friends in the Jewish community, right? And what happened there was a disaster. But what's concerning me is some of the noises coming out of the leadership of the Jewish community, because they're in fully support of, tighter gun laws, hate speech laws, all that sort of thing. When we're not identifying what the real issue is, which is radical Islam. I mean, Blind Freddie can see that. Why is the whole of Australia's community? And my advice to any Jewish person out there, if you want to fight against anti-Semitism, don't penalise the entire Australia community for the sins of a minority.
Yeah, and it has to be said. It has to be said that, like, even referring to the Jewish community or leadership of the Jewish community is very fraught because they're a very, very fractious group of people.
Yes,
and they don't agree on everything. And I think that some groups like the AJA and Avi Yemeni and others have really come out and said the laws we have work just fine if you want to actually enforce them.
Mm.
And I think that's the correct position. Because, the truth is, and this is really sometimes counterintuitive for me to try to explain to people, there's this absolutely fantastic book that I read while I was doing my law degree. And I can't remember that. I'll have to share it with you. I'll have to put it on the X after this. But this guy's thesis is, he basically says governments are less and less able as time goes on to actually influence events, and they're much more caught up in global trends and things that happen, and they're much more reactive. Like, they're not really the people that set the agenda much anymore. And they're so worried that people will work that out, that what happens when you get a crisis like this or something happens like COVID is they just have this huge outsized reaction, like this knee-jerk performance reaction, this emotive reaction to make you feel like they are doing something. And it just isn't grounded in reality. It's not actually from a position of strength. It's from a position of weakness.
Yes.
You see it in dogs, you see it in animals. Like, the more afraid a dog is, the more aggressive it'll be. And I think we have some very scared dogs in our government.
That's a great analogy. I got in a massive argument the other day. You get the old theories, and the old conspiracy theories come out, and look, some of them are valid. I'm not going to knock them all, but I've had some people that have had some amazing conspiracy theories. But some people live with conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And I made the similar argument to what yours, not quite as eloquently as you just did, but they were talking, it's a globalist, it's a corporates, they're all
false flag,
all this. And I just said, listen, Elbow doesn't know how to handle it.
No, that's right. It's what we call, so there's Occam's razor, which is the simplest explanation, is usually the right one.
Yes.
Then there's Hanlon's razor, which is incompetence to a great enough extent is indistinguishable from malice. And I think those two together just summarize government perfectly. And you know what the antidote to conspiracy thinking like that is for people to actually meet and spend time with politicians. Because I can tell you, I got cured of conspiracy thinking in my 20s when I was like hanging around Sarah Henderson and other Liberal MPs, and you just see them day to day, and you're like, not only are you just a person, you're not even a particularly good person, or like in terms of merit or ability, like you're like a below average person, and it just, everything makes sense. Like, and there's some exceptions to that, but in general, politicians have less idea than most of us what's going on.
Right,
they just end up getting weather vaned around where these kind of really strong vocal minority voices take them. Yeah,
you've only got to look at question time in federal parliament. You don't get much of it in the Victoria. But you look at the backbenchers on there, mate. Seriously, I wouldn't employ them to clean my toilet, half of them. I mean, they're that bad. And when they get up and speak, it just reinforces it. Now, I've got no doubt there's some very smart people and very ethical people there as well. So, for example, my big issue with the ALP, I voted for the ALP when I was younger, and I don't think that was the wrong vote. Bob Hawke's cabinet was full of people with life experience. There was tradies, there was lawyers, there was a whole bunch of people from different parts of Australia that came together. Now, the ALP government is all these people that have gone through universities, got their degree and whatever, and they've gone straight from that to be a administrator in the ALP and then straight into Parliament. No life experience. Look at your life experience, for example, compared to them. You're going to be able to go in there with some real value if you make it, and I hope you do, just like David Limbrick. It sounds like I'm really pushing you libertarian guys here, but you're not there for the politics. You're there for the right reasons. Now, for the Liberals, for all their faults, they've got more people like that than the ALP do, for example.
Yeah, well, they have historically had.
No. Well, there's still a few. They've got more.
Yeah, there are still a few, but increasingly, and I'll tell you about my friend Jess Wilson in a second.
Okay, good. I'll be interested to hear that.
Yeah. Like she just hasn't had a single experience that hasn't been working as a staffer. She's been with the Business Council of Australia, but that's not the same as business experience.
No.
But,
no, I'm talking more like maybe, for example, I don't know what you think of him, but at least Andrew Hastie spent some time in the military, for example.
Well, someone like Alex Antich is someone I greatly respect.
Yes,
Alex. He's already come out and said he's not going to be voting in favour of anything that like hate speech laws, all that sort of stuff.
No, Alex is very.
He crossed the floor to vote against those laws before Christmas last year.
There was a member of the Liberal Party in New South Wales that crossed the floor too today, didn't she?
I'm not across that. Maybe, yeah.
Because someone gave her quite a bit of credit. She crossed the floor to vote against that bill. So anyway, I'm not saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Liberals are good. I will get onto them a bit later too. All I'm saying is they're better than the ALP, which is not very hard. So let's keep that in reality. But what you're saying is, I just think. Here's the problem that I see in it. I think this was an American politician that was talking about it. Could have been, what's his name? Ben Shapiro. All right. And I haven't been a big fan of Ben Shapiro. I've been neutral on him. I really don't follow him that much. But his speech, I think at the AmFest or when he was being interviewed about it, and what he's saying when you get these total conspiracy theories all the time. Now, there's going to be some valid ones, granted, especially after COVID. But when you get them all the time, and I'm suspicious of government, but what we can't afford to do is to lose our faith in our institutions and our government and that our democracy means something. Because where you go to once the majority of the population starts thinking that is a very dark place. And I'm not too sure we want to go down that way. The resolution of our problems is getting people like you, good people, into our parliament. And until the Australian voting public take their vote far more seriously and start considering different candidates and their backgrounds and their education and their life experience, all the things we're talking about, a big part of the problem isn't the politicians, it's the people sending those politicians into our parliament. So we've got to find a better way to get better politicians in our parliament. And at the end of the day, that's us who make the votes. So that's why I've never gone on the bandwagon. I said I got really motivated during COVID because I thought some of the ridiculous thing in our liberties would have been taken away. That's when I jumped, screw this, I'm joining a political party. So the Liberal Democrats are going, liberties, they're taking them. I've got to go for the party. That's for the liberties. It was actually a really interesting experience, actually, to get into it. But, yeah, mate, and this young boy last night, I actually felt bad for him. You know, I'm thinking, you think there's so many demons in the world that are out to ruin your future that you're going to ruin your future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's one of those things where it's like, what is it? You know, fear becomes prophecy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you can actually create a reality by worrying so much about it and you can manifest it in your life. Yes, I agree.
I've got, it's a sports analogy, and a lot of people go, oh, you can't use sport, it's different. Actually, there's a lot of similarities between sport and life. Like, I can take a kid in my basketball team, right? And I'm very good at what I do. I can teach, I've had 5 juniors going and playing the NBL, all that sort of stuff. So I can give kids fairly elite skills. And they secure those skills. Then they go into a game and they won't try those skills no matter how much I encourage them, to the point we have a massive confrontation. You want to know what the number one factor from them not trying those skills is?
Fear of failure.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's the same with these younger generations. It's the fear of their future. It's the fear they can't own a home. It's the fear they can't have a family. And this is where our politicians, who I don't think in many instances, like you said, are capable of and this is what I'm trying to say on the X-Base last night. We've got to get politicians that can give us hope, that can give us that expectation that tomorrow is going to be a better day and the other day. That's why your story resonates with me so much. You're in the dark thing, but you always obviously had that hope, even though you had to fight for it, to make tomorrow a better day. That's why your story for me, mate, resonates. And I think it would resonate with a lot of people. So, mate, got a few questions for you.
Let's do it.
And these can be quick fire questions, or we can get into a few of them. After the events, I've got to put my glasses on, look educated. After the events at Bondi, is multiculturalism dead?
Well, I think it's a bit of a myth that it ever really existed in the first place, is the answer I would give. Like, essentially what multiculturalism has meant basically let's all pretend there's no difference between us, when obviously that's not true. And I think it's been a bit of a convenient myth to allow the dismantling of an Australian culture that did exist and sort of to illegitimize it. So I think multiculturalism tends to mean that there is no pre-existing Australian culture. And I think that's a pretty dangerous road to go down, because once you just say everything's relative and all cultures are sort of equivalent in our country, then you tend to get balkanization, ghettoization. You tend to get people not feeling as though, like, there's suburbs in eastern Melbourne where there's street signs in Chinese and you don't need to speak English to survive. And whatever you might think about the merits of Chinese society or whatever else, I don't think it's a good thing that it is increasingly possible and sometimes even encouraged to get by in our state, here in Victoria, and our country, without having to actually integrate and to assimilate. And we talked a little bit before, as I now know, we were live, but not a lot of people were maybe watching at that stage.
I caught you out. See, I was setting you up.
No, it's like I didn't say anything that I would regret. That's the beauty of being honest and not sort of throwing crooked dice, is that you don't have to worry about if there's a hot mic.
No, exactly.
Accidentally live, whatever. It's a lovely way to live, and I can tell you, pre-2015, that was not my life. So I really enjoy having the freedom of mind and peace of mind that brings. But my family came here from Germany just after World War II. My grandfather came over here in 1948, just after World War II, and it was not an easy time for German immigrants in Australia, I can tell you. And my grandfather loved this country. Like, he just he adopted it as his home, and he really worked hard to build a life for himself and his young wife, my grandmother, here, and he built a family here. And I think he would be really sad to see people say that there is no Australia, basically, that it's like we're all colonizers anyway, and what's it matter? Because I think it does matter.
Well, that goes back to what we're talking about with hope and positivity. When you continually have politicians tearing down our heritage, they're basically saying anyone born before 19 whatever, when we got rid of the White Australia policy, for example, I think that was in the 60s sometime. They're basically saying anybody before that was a colonizer. Well, excuse my French, anyone who's got that opinion, fuck you. You never knew my father, who fought for this country in New Guinea for God knows how many years, who built a life, had a large family, raised his kids, gave them a private school education, mum and dad sacrificed themselves for us kids. I had grandparents who came over just before Australia became a federation. These people built this country, and did they make mistakes? We always have to seem to go back, did they make mistakes? Well, every human make mistakes, but they built this country to what it could be today, yet we tear that down. And that's what our kids get through their education. They get it in the media. They get it from the politicians. Every time you go to a sports game, we get the welcome to bloody country. I'm now looking at Indigenous types that have more Anglo DNA in them than Santa Claus, but they're claiming indigeneity. So the whole thing, it's just getting pumped, and we're just making young people feel ashamed of the country they should be very proud of and understand there's a big future in. So multiculturalism, I think we're united on this one, mate. I hope it's dead. I'm going to play you something. I'm going to be interested in your thoughts. I'll test out my technological abilities here, mate. I always have fun when I'm sharing a screen. So bear with me. I'm going to go to my X. I'm going to share it with everyone, including you. There was a guy in the New South Wales. Sorry, mate. I should have this up. What an idiot. Here we go. On this guy. Here, listen to this guy's response. Mark Lake.
I was disturbed by sense that were made earlier in this debate that seemed to suggest that the multicultural project is a failed project, and I utterly reject that. I think there's no question that we are still, despite Bondi, a incredibly successful multicultural society, and by and large Australians live together in peace and harmony, and we get on despite our differences of ethnicity or faith. And I think it's a dangerous thing, it's a corrosive thing to try and encourage some kind of debate that says you're rejecting multiculturalism. I'm not sure what that looks like in terms of the alternative. There's no going back. We are a multi-faith, multicultural society. There's no returning to a white Anglo-Saxon era. Those days have passed. The only option for us is to actually find a way through where we get along, where we look after each other, where we express social solidarity, and we find strength in our differences.
Now, I said the only thing I said, what a fucking wanker.
Yeah, I saw that. I did see. I saw that as you scanned the video. It's interesting because what he says is not untrue in some ways. Like, as in general, Australians do live and let live and get along very well and respect differences and stuff like that. But that's in spite of...
That's Australian culture.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's
multicultural. That's Aussie culture.
It's almost in spite of the government messaging rather than because of it. And, you know, Australians are pretty easygoing people. And I think if we weren't, there would have been a lot more significant pushback than there has been. But I think we're getting to that point. And as you said, I think that the alternative to working out a way for us to acknowledge, and acknowledge is almost like a fraught word now, where it's like, the acknowledgement of country or whatever, but like to acknowledge that you can't just turn around when it's convenient for you and say, okay, well, now the floodgates have been open for long enough. Now we are what we are. when nobody really expressed a view on that or was given the choice about that.
We weren't given a vote on it.
That's right. So I think it's kind of almost trying to present something as a fait accompli. And like his language is pretty telling, where he said, well, this is where we are. We've got to make it work. And it's like, well, we're not as there as I think people want us to think. Like in terms of the actual demographic makeup of Australia, outside the cities in particular, we do still have a distinct culture. And, I'm not someone who's super comfortable for obvious reasons. Like, there's nothing Anglo or Saxon about me. I'm a German immigrant, basically. Or, I was born here, but that's my background.
Mate, you're a white male.
With a little bit
you're
of
as tainted as the rest of us.
There. But, I think we need to have a conversation about what Australian culture is, and to say that it's nothing is an unsatisfactory answer.
Well, it was interesting, and my thoughts on the NSN a fair bit, but I tell you what, where would our politicians be without the NSN? They're the most convenient whipping boy on the planet. I mean, straight away, he segued straight into white nationalism, where that wasn't even raised. No. Mark Latham, I think, made a very good comment, is if multiculturalism was so successful, why did Bondi happen?
Yes. That's right. Well, I'll tell you why it happened, among other things.
Yeah.
It's because ASIO and, all the intelligence services, the AFP, were looking where Elbow told them to look, which is at the NSN, etc. And they're out there, like, as you say, they're not people that I'm particularly fond of, and that's on record, and they don't love me because I'm a race trader and whatever else.
Yeah.
But, they're not out there, shooting people.
Breaking law.
and they've certainly behaved poorly, and the attack on the group of Aboriginal people or whatever.
Indigenous.
That's obviously unacceptable. But in general, they're basically just politically advocating, and they're trying to make a point, and they're trying to, advance a view, which pretty soon is going to be illegal, which I think is a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to guarantee that those guys just go underground and people seek them out because they're saying things that you can't say, then do what the government's doing. Like, you are setting up an entrenched, and you're basically going to be doing their recruiting for them.
Well, I'm actually with the guy last night. Like, I've invited him on. He won't take it up. I've invited a number of the NSN types to come on this podcast and do what we're doing and have a chat. Tell me what your ideology is. Let's discuss it. We'll disagree with it, no doubt, but there's probably going to be parts that we do agree with. I'm very much a Christian nationalist, but my nationalism is very different to an NSN type.
Yes.
So. And I find it amazing that now, if you're a nationalist, you've been made to feel embarrassed by it. Like that straight away. If I said I'm a Christian nationalist and an ALP member of Parliament, more than likely I get the same response as that guy. Why? Do you want to be the White Australia policy back in? No, I don't. Do I want just an Anglo thing? No, European, whatever. I'm a Christian. That means I accept everyone. All I want is anybody who comes to our shores as an immigrant adopts our culture. That's all I want. And if you're willing to come here, work hard, have a family, pay your taxes, engage in our democracy, not try and impinge yourself on somebody else's life, that's pretty much Australian culture. And by the way, go and adopt a footy team or a cricket team and enjoy all that going forward. But, mate, that was a long one. Well, I think we can both furiously agree on that one. Let's get to my next one is NSN Groypers and Marches. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I went to the first March for Australia, and it was a big rally, lots and lots of people. The NSN weren't nearly as central to it as what they liked to make out they were, and they were facilitated by the police. Like, I watched the police escort them to the front of the protest. Everyone was already gathered. People got there super early, which I don't think they were expecting. The police literally escorted them to the front to the waiting news cameras. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was, and I don't think it's because they're, police informants or whatever. I just think it's because that's what the media want to see. And that's how they want to cast it. And I think the March for Australia movement...
Is that what the media wanted to see? Is that what the Victorian ALP wanted the media to?
Is the media and the Victorian ALP a different thing?
Good point.
But I think that movement, for want of a better word, of MFA is that kind of spontaneous anger outpouring of that sort of generation where it's this kind of primal cry almost. And I think people would be very foolish to discount it. I don't think it's really going to manifest in our politics for now, but I think it will if it's not given a channel to do so. And interestingly, one of the reasons I ran for the Senate that I actually put my hand up was the NSN marched through Ballarat on the anniversary of the Eureka Stockade a couple of years ago. So this would have been 23, I'd say, and towards the end of 2023. Yeah. And they marched down the main street of Ballarat with a banner that said Australia for the white man and a megaphone and carrying on and stuff. And I saw that and I was like, what are we doing here? And I just realized that I think libertarians, for example, and that's just because that's the movement that I have some influence in and have to do with, I think we have a responsibility to be providing solutions to these very real problems that aren't insane, because you've got the NSN and the Victorian Socialists, and I see them as very much like the horseshoe theory. They're sort of not that far apart at the bottom. And the thing is, they identify the problems very well. Like, they actually identify the issues quite accurately, both of them. But it's the solutions to those problems that as soon as you start looking behind the curtain, you're like, well, that's a shit show. Like, that is bad. And I think that the major parties can't answer the problems. They don't even want to admit there's a problem. They don't want to, like that. You've just heard, we saw that video. Like, there is no problem. Clearly, that's not the case. And I think that libertarians have almost a unique ability, I think, to cut through with solutions that aren't insane and that can, give that sense of possibility again. But yeah, so that's kind of an interesting question. It sort of was directly related to why I put my hand up.
Okay, well, that's really interesting too, because it gives me a segue into your mate, John Ruddock.
Oh, very good.
So I would totally agree with what you're saying with the NSN and the Victorian Socialists. It's sort of, in the background, it's anarchy. They want to tear everything down. The other group I would put in there is radical Islam. I think probably even bigger threats than the other two, if you look into it. Now, I mean, I don't want to really go into dividing radical Islam and all that. I think unless you're totally undereducated, you'd know what I'm doing. But I found it, and this is where I had my falling out with John. And it wasn't a little falling out, it was a major falling out. I've known John longer than you knew John. I actually was one of the people that convinced him to get out of the Liberal Party and do something else. I wasn't expecting him to join the Liberal Democrats, but we had probably an hour conversation once on the phone once he decided to do it, and he wanted me to jump on board. This is before COVID, the Liberal Democrats then. I don't even think, John may know now, he may remember who I was because my name's out there, but a lot of these conversations when I was just simply the Conservative. So I was a bit anonymous. So whether he knew that he tied in the Conservative and Bob Mann together, I'm not sure. But I find it a bit of a conundrum that you've got one of your main people in New South Wales who's marching across the bridge with 1 week people that would be cheering on what happened at Bondi. Now, not everyone in that crowd, but John would have known. John's not a stupid man. He's a very smart man. He would know there would be Hamas supporters, pro-Palestinian supporters, ISIS supporters, the radical elements in that march. We had a conversation about that, and he blocked me, which I found very interesting for a supposed libertarian. And my feelings had been sort of building up because going back into the election when you got Craig Kelly on board, so this ties in the New South Wales, I had a guy from behind the scenes he claimed to be, and it struck as the truth. And he said he was working for the New South Wales Libertarians. They wanted me to try and get involved with them. And I said, no. And he goes, why not? I didn't think recruiting Craig Kelly was a good idea. And I had a lot of time for Craig Kelly, but he's bounced around from one party to the other. So when I talk about integrity, like David Limbrick, you, Tim Quilty, you're pure libertarians. I don't trust people that don't understand their ideology and bounce around from one to the other. And when I raised that with this guy, he said, oh, don't worry about that. We're looking to form a conservative brand of the Libertarian Party. And I'm going, how's that work? Next thing, John's marching across Sydney Harbour Bridge. A week or two later, he's marching with the NSN, which was clearly them. Joel Davis and his crew were leading that march in Sydney. They were standing front and centre with John. Now, if John had have had some integrity, and I know David Limbrick definitely would have done this, he would have called them out there and then. They were cheering on and all that. And he, in my opinion, dog whistled towards the NSN because he was talking about having a 5-year freeze on immigration. I actually proposed a 10-year freeze. But they said, no, we want more. And he goes, well, whatever you want, we'll have a bidding thing. I mean, I was watching it on the live stream. They were there, smack in front of him.
I think to be fair, I think so. I saw that part of the video. I didn't watch the whole thing, but
yeah,
I think it was in my view. I think he was kind of responding in a way that was trying to get through a situation where he was basically being heckled, and it's not always easy to handle that when you're speaking publicly. So I think that, you know, if he was there and it was a calm, composed situation, I think his response might have been different. Like, I can't speak for him. And at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to purport to. But from what I saw of that particular rally, they had this kind of like scenario where I was pretty disappointed in the organisers, where it was kind of, I think, a bit of a bait and switch, where it was quite clear that
100% it was.
Where it was quite clear that they obviously had some kind of, where it was an open mic thing, but then obviously the NSN got it with pre-planned speeches or whatever. But my read of that interaction, where John Ruddock was sort of trying to, off the cuff, riff off and continue his speech while he was basically being heckled, like, I wouldn't necessarily, read too much intention into that. Now, as to his decision to participate in two almost like opposing marches or whatever, I think you might see that as irreconcilable inconsistency. But knowing John as I've come to know him, and you're right, you've probably known him longer, but like, I know John as a man who he is, like, I think for him that is totally consistent, where in his mind he was supporting freedom of protest, freedom of speech and assembly, and he would just participate in both sides. Now, he has some views about the Palestine conflict, the Gaza Israel conflict, that I think are a little bit naive in terms of believing everything you see. And I say that as someone who has kind of studied Middle Eastern politics and history for a long time. When I was in the army, I did like an assignment on the Palestine Mandate, the protectorate that the British were administering before it all went to complete shit. And people don't realise that, like, they weren't Israelis then, obviously, because Israel didn't exist. But the Jews in Palestine, like, literally terrorist, like, suicide bombed the British. Like, they fucked them up.
Yeah.
It was hardcore.
Yep.
And so, but that was a period of time that a lot of people don't like to talk about. They just like to go, from this point on, this is when we're going to start judging history. But my point is, I've seen, both sides basically manufacture what looks like news to be essentially propaganda. I'm very, very mistrustful of anything. Like, if I'm not there on the ground seeing it, I would be very, very hard pressed to believe anything either side says, to be completely honest with you.
No, I'd agree. But you've missed my point. So I'll give you this point. As a libertarian, if you're talking Victorian Socialist, NSN, or radical Islamist supporters, whether they're supporters or not, I'll even give you the point that he might have been caught in a difficult position. But since that time, he's gone into New South Wales Parliament and made speeches supporting Beck Freedom and a bunch of those who were the organisers you're talking about, and extolled their virtues. Now, here is my major general point. And as a person who respects the libertarian values, how can you align yourself with any group in the bigger, wider picture of groups like NSN, Radical Islam, Victorian Socialist, and a lot of their core belief is to suppress the individual liberties and freedoms and the ability to speak of others that you speak about? To me, David, I thought Limbrick handled this beautifully all throughout. He is very supportive of the Jewish community, totally against NSN, wasn't going to get drawn into it, didn't.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'll interrupt you there for a second. Though,
yeah, sure.
He is totally against NSN. That is true. But he has also said that they have the right to freedom of speech. Like and this is one thing. This is the thing with John and David. They often say things that sound very different because the way their personalities are and the way they communicate is very different. And so it will sound as though they are saying very different things. But when you drill down and actually look at what are they saying and what's the policy basis of what they're talking about, it's often a lot closer together than meets the eye. That's all I'll say. It's very, and I'm not suggesting that you've misinterpreted things or you haven't discerned things correctly in terms of differences, but I will say I have noticed that there's a tendency for people to emphasize the differences between their positions when, in fact, there's often very little difference in their position. There's a big difference in the way that's communicated.
Okay, so I appreciate
that's like, there's a difference between saying, and I've said, and again, very critical of the NSN, I've said they should be free to say Jews hate freedom or whatever the fuck they want at the front of state parliament. Like, that is their right? And I think that,
and they shouldn't be sent back to
David Southwick, the opposition leader of the basically the opposition police minister, then says we should lock these people up. Guess what? You're probably giving them a free kick. If their sign says Jews hate freedom, and then the Jewish minister is saying lock them up, that's a bit of a free kick from a probably, like, to be Goebbels to manufacture that into some pretty good propaganda, right? But I think that, I've said that before, that, while I disagree with their views, they should be free to speak. I don't think they should be free to be platformed, like as in, I don't believe they have the right to force others to listen to them. And that's another nuance where people get really funny about it, because like I believe that as much as X and stuff is the digital town square, you have the ability to block, you have the ability to mute and essentially choose who you associate with. So it's like, if you're standing in the town square and someone's got a megaphone, you can walk away from that person.
Yeah.
If you're on X, that's what blocking and silencing and muting and stuff is the equivalent of. And I personally don't believe elected representatives should engage in that, or should engage in it only sparingly. I've through the election campaign, the only times I actually blocked people were when they were making like really personal attacks on me or my partner and stuff, like just really fucked up stuff. Whereas like when they're proving that they're not good faith, that's, you don't have to have that conversation. But but anyway, I think John just is a very passionate person in his mannerisms, and he is much more inclined to advocate the free speech position as a virtue in itself, rather than sort of be maybe more discerning or express his position on things.
I'm going to give you a lot of points on what's the word? All right, let me put it this way. and this is where I think it's an advantage for me in many ways. When you're in a football team and someone comes in and be critical of someone in that footy team or cricket team, everyone rallies around and they push back on that criticism. I think sometimes when you're in a political party group, lobby group, the same thing can happen. When you're on the outside looking in, I think personally, I could be wrong, you can argue against this, I think people can see it a little bit more clearly.
There's definitely value in the outside perspective. And obviously, like, you know,
and you've got to defend John. I mean, I understand that. I mean, I'm not trying to get you in a gotcha moment. I'm just more concerned. I'm more concerned about I'll give you an example. On the NSN, I'm totally opposed to the NSN. But I've invited Beck Freedom. We got in a debate online. I said, well, come on my podcast. Let's talk. I shouldn't say it's a funny thing because I feel sorry for him. But I got on this podcast with Scott Challen. We started talking about the NSN. And I said, I would actually like to talk to a few of the NSN guys. I'm curious as to why they've got to where they are now. I'd like to try and understand it. And then I'd like to try and convince them there's a better way. And I said, I'd even talk to a person like Joel Davis. And I said that innocently. Well, the next thing, I'm getting messages from all the NSN guys. Hey, look at this guy. He wants to talk to Joel Davis. He'd eat him alive. So I actually went back to one of them and I said, listen, if he wants to come on and he wants to have a legitimate conversation, I'll talk to him. I said, I'm happy to talk to anybody. And as long as it's respectful like we're doing here. And you've got to, I really think actually that's part of the libertarian values, the right to free speech, the right to opinion, the right to engage. I've actually had these arguments, I can't believe, with libertarians themselves. I think in that part, in many ways, I'm more libertarian than some of the libertarians. You know, if you want it, let the battle of ideas happen and let the best ideas win. You know, that's what you've got to do. The best way to push back against NSN or any ideology you don't appreciate is to engage with it and then convince those people listening why your idea is better. If we are now, the thing that scared the shit out of me with Tony Burke, I don't know whether you saw the press conference yesterday, he's talking about, well, we've got the line here in the sand for what is hate speech, but we can't get the bastards. So we're going to move that line in the sand so we can get them there. So what was legal yesterday, he's going to make illegal tomorrow.
Yes. It's heads I win, tails you lose. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just, I just don't, and that's where I think as a society, and this is where the American Constitution with the Bill of Rights is so good and something we desperately need in Australia. And that is where I think, that's where I hope, I'm not too sure we'll ever get there, but the centre-right parties can come together collectively, and that includes the Liberals, go back to their old values at some stage and start representing the individual rights of people. And that's where I have the issue with John. He's working with, he might think that's freedom of speech, but the people he's marking alongside and talking to and encouraging don't have those similar values. At what point, as a libertarian, do you pull back and say, listen, I respect your right to free speech, but I can't respect your ideology that will suppress another person's right to free speech? A radical Islamist is not going to respect you and me talking about Western society, European society, Western civilization that was based on Christianity, a lot of its foundations going forward. They're going to want to destroy that. And what was it? I was reading up on a story. It was a Christian town in Syria. And basically, no, it was in Italy. So when and the Ottoman Empire was invading into Europe and they took over this Italian town, they basically gave an ultimatum to all the men there: you convert to Islam or you lose your life. 80 of the men said, no, we're devout Christians. You're going to have to kill us. They all got beheaded. So, that's where radical Islam comes from, and it hasn't changed much.
Yeah.
So I don't see how, as a libertarian, and I don't think John's a stupid person. I think he's an incredibly smart guy. I don't think he's naive. That's the conundrum to me. How can you look past that and march with that group? How can you, all right, you got caught out on the speeches, but you're still promoting it inside the parliament. And I'm seeing that, and then I'm seeing David on the other side, and I'm going, God, that's the reason I didn't vote Libertarian last election. I just saw that coming up, which I felt really bad about. First time in 10 years, I hadn't done it. So I felt conflicted on doing that. And I got my flack for voting MAGA and donkey voting. So that's something for you guys to consider. But I felt that conflicted with Libertarian Party voters. And the thing that actually surprised me, I wasn't talking to you as much. You might have been saying it. I was arguing with a lot of the New South Wales Libertarians, and I was copping flack for putting forward libertarian values. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? And unfortunately, because I have that brother element where we fight, when I cop flack, I mean, I push back, and that's where you probably get comment, oh, Bob's an arsehole or whatever. But I'm not the type to sort of go in my hole because someone's coming at me. I'm actually the other way. I'll come back harder.
No, I'm really enjoing this conversation, but I will let you know I've got to be gone at 10 o'clock. So I turn into a pumpkin. So we've got to do some
we got some quick stuff stop giving me such long answers. All right. So actually we've ticked off a few. We've gone, mate, we've done radical Islam. I'll do my ticking off here. Just quickly, remigration. Do you think that's on the NSN thing?
No, I don't think that's
feasible.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the way to do things. I think that my view on all of this is that race and religion are the lines that people divide themselves along when there's no greater narrative being provided. And I think that even though I think the government should be a lot smaller, and I think that the government's strayed into all sorts of areas it shouldn't be, at least how it had a sense of communicating a guiding message, a uniting message.
Yeah.
That's what we're missing. And we're turning into a tribal, Balkan, fractured society because our leaders aren't leading us and they're not giving us a team culture. You talk about the basketball team and, the importance of a leadership team within a sporting group or a club that actually sets the culture and actually everyone takes their cues from. There's no such thing as bad teams. There's only bad leaders. And I think Team Australia is badly led at the moment.
Well, to be fair, very similar. I think they were both similar despite being on the opposite side of the aisle. I think Bob Hawke was very similar. To what you're talking about with John Howard. Keating, he was sort of in between. We're a very lucky country to have those two for so long. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, and Lee, you can have your faults with both of them, but under those two, and I think Howard said it best, he got criticised for this, he wanted Australians to feel comfortable. And I would kill for comfortable right now, getting along with everyone.
I think Howard towards the end got a bit spare the rod, spoil the child, to be honest.
Yes. No, I agree with you there. All right. All right. These ones should be interesting. Yes or no? Give me a yes or no. She's gonna hate me for this because I haven't invited her on the podcast. She doesn't like my contributions on her feeds. But anyway, Monica Schmidt.
A yes or no to that? I'd say no. Hard.
Okay, no. Cool. Done.
I think that's probably best to leave it at that.
No, good. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Sherry Markson.
I beg your pardon?
Sherry Markson.
I'm not a massive fan.
And she got me blocked initially. I'm pretty sure it was her. I can't say for sure, but I put a critical thing on her. You know when she made that comment about she can't sit around a table and take in the air from people who hadn't been vaccinated? Do you remember that comment?
I don't remember that comment, but she's had lots of...
Yeah, she made a really stupid comment. I had a crack at it, and the next thing I know, I'm getting banned off X, or what was then Twitter. So I actually think I've got a lot of time for Avi, but I think as journalists too, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, I don't like it when journalists sort of become activists. And I felt with Shari and both Avi on the Israel thing, they're more activists than journalists.
Yes,
and I think that hurts their cause more than helps it. Yeah, and I want their cause helped, but I don't think it does. All right. Albo on the ALP at the moment.
I mean, it's just shocking. And yeah, I think that we might be headed for another 10 years of socialist darkness, both at a state and federal level.
Don't say that.
Mate, I honestly, but the one shining light in that is that I think that people will actually join the dots because the pain will get great enough.
Well, actually, I'll give you a thing on the elbow and the ALP to get them out, because that's what we've got to do. And in the next election, I'm going with my vote on I'm not going to vote MAGA again. I will vote. I'm not going to let what's the old saying? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Whatever way I can vote to get Albo and the ALP out, we've got to do, all right? Whether that's you guys, One Nation, whether it's the Liberals, whatever it is, that's where I'm going. The one thing I'd say, and I've copped a bit of flack, I am sensing, and it'll be interesting on your thoughts, and I think you can tell, again, from being the outside, people that when they're being legitimately passionate about what they believe in and when they're playing politics, I'm sensing for the better, and I'm hoping, I'm not convinced of it yet, I'm sensing a change within the LNP. I'm sensing more people because of this. I think they've realised that Labor light doesn't work. This leads to this tragedy. And maybe they're throwing off, and I'm not so much with Andrew Hastie and the Conservatives within there. The language I'm hearing from Susan Ley herself, I'm not a big fan of Susan Ley. I don't think she should be leader of the Liberal Party. But she is making some sound she would never have made 12 months ago. Julian Lesser, bloody moderate I can't stand a lot in a lot of his policy. But he really spoke out. Michael McCormick today. I'm finding some real passion out of this. They're pissed off. And I'm just hoping, because I'll give you a hypothetical on it, out of this, and it's a big hypothetical, tell me what you think. Out of this, I hope they do change leader. I hope they do get a Conservative like Hastie in charge. I hope they go back to Menzies' conservatism more than what they are the moderates. And they go back to small L moderates instead of Labor light moderates. But the biggest thing, I hope there's a leadership group that does what you did, mate, and they reach across, not the aisle to the ALP, they have a roundhouse of the minor parties in every centre right. They get a leadership in there, they bang heads for a week, and they get the best, like I said, the war cabinet, they get the best and brightest from the centre right, and for this nation's interest, they unite it. Now, I know you tried it, but I think I think it was a noble effort. I think it got undermined by certain other minor parties and other things.
Well, we first tried like 2 years before, and no one wanted to talk about it. So, like in the end, I think that we had a valiant, as you say, a valiant rearguard effort, and I think that I felt we needed to try. I think it was too late to really make traction.
Right.
So I agree with that.
Yeah, so I just think the Liberals, whether you love them or hate them, they're the shortest pathway to a change of government. They're the ones, even with One Nation, like you're saying, they might get the balance of power, but the balance of power still doesn't get the ALP out.
No.
If we can get a leadership or a leadership group there that can go to say, you guys, listen, we share a lot in common. Why are we fighting with each other? We could actually bring you guys into a coalition of unity, and if you guys work, we'll give you a cabinet position or something like that. Put the country ahead of party.
Well, and if you look at New Zealand, their Nationals, which is like our Liberals, they're in coalition government with the ACT party at the moment, which is the Alliance of Consumers and Taxpayers, that are basically like us.
Yeah.
So it can happen, and I think it should happen.
That's my hope.
Yeah, look.
And I think for you guys,
I love that you have hope, and I don't.
We got to have hope.
But with the Liberals, I just.
You don't sense change?
I'm a pretty good judge of people, right? And I saw back in 2014 where they would end up, and that has, I've been proven right by everything that's happened.
100%. But eventually you come out of that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just think that constitutionally, within themselves as an organisation, they've just become a party of government. But in doing that, they've made sure that they're never going to be a party of government again. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think that in some ways, the only thing I would speak against the hope you have is that if an undeserving Liberal Party opposition wins government, then I think their lack of preparedness, lack of having actually learnt the genuine lessons in the wilderness they need to learn, might make the next ALP win generational. If they win before they're ready, as in if the Liberals win before they've learned what they need to learn, then I think we are all doomed, because the ALP government that comes in after that, so Morrison was bad, but we think fondly now of Morrison compared to what we have had since.
No, I'll never think fondly of Morrison.
But I'm saying by comparison, do you know what I mean? But
no, I get what you mean.
But I think that the risk with the Liberals getting an undeserving win, though they might be notionally better than ALP by a little bit, is that what message they will send about conservative / classical liberal government will be that what's the point? Well, what was the point of that? Because that's what we got in Victoria between 2010 and 2014.
No, I agree. But that's and listen, maybe my hope is too much, but I'm certainly going to write to them about it. If they can get, and even if Susan Lay can do it, I mean, stop arguing with the ARP and argue with people who can be your allies. And again, it would go to you guys. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Get some good people in there that can help turn. Look at Trump. I mean, he's developed an alliance with RFK Jr., who used to be a Democrat. He's got Tulsi Gabbard in there, who used to be a Democrat. He's got people who, over periods of time, they've had differences in politics, but they're coming together to work for what they consider to be the best interests of their country. So I'm hoping we'll go there. So, yeah, you haven't written off all my hopes, so that's a good thing. All right. Got a couple more in here for you, mate. There's one here I think it'll take a fair bit of time. We might have to come back to on a future date. We'll see how we go. We talked about it a bit already. And one we can have a bit of fun with. Trump's announcement today. What do you think of his Trump battleships?
I tell you what, I forgot how entertaining 2016 to 2020 was. And when he got elected again, I won even more money on him this time, mind you. I actually won $2,000 on him this time when he was 2-1 odds. Yeah. So I've only been on humans, and I've had a pretty good run. I won Trump 2016, Ruddock 2023, and Trump 2024. So that's a pretty good run.
That is a very good run.
But yeah, I mean, he is off the rails. Look, I think the whole Venezuela thing, unfortunately, is just the military-industrial. Like, they're like, okay, you don't want more in the Middle East? Well, we need war somewhere. Like, I just think it's, it's just...
I think he's just he's really funny. And if nothing else, he gives you a laugh.
Yes.
I actually think he's a very good chess player. I don't think he wants to go to war in Venezuela. He set Tucker Carlson up the other day. Tucker Carlson's got this rumor he's having a big announcement about going to war tonight, and then he goes on national TV and it had nothing to do with it. But what he did was get primetime coverage. I mean, it's just, what do they call it, 3D chess or 4D chess? The man is so smart. And he's talking, I think, I'm just wondering whether this announcement on battleships is sending a signal to Venezuela. Well, fuck, we can't win this thing. Let's concede. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it's like that. It's like that sort of, mad dog thing where it's like, is he going to do it? Who knows? Like, because remember, I don't know if you recall that he had that Iranian general killed like right at the end of his first term. Yeah. They just like blew this guy off the face of the planet, and they were just like, you know what? Maybe he's going to do it this time. Like, who knows?
Yeah. Well, the one thing he's always said is, I'm not going to let you know what I'm going to do, because why would I do that? I'm just giving a heads up to everyone else, which I think with your military background, that's actually pretty smart. You want to do it, mate. We are running out of that time. So I had crime down here, but we covered it a little bit. That was more to do with crime on the Victorian streets, but we'd go forever. So I'll scrub that for now. The last one to finish off again with a bit of fun. When you do get off, watch later on, because I've got a few of the memes of Trump that they've been putting up for Christmas. They're so good. They're just so funny. So if you can't watch them at the end, get back on later on, because I'll publish it. One thing we didn't get onto was housing affordability. That's going to take a lot longer. So let's finish off with this. Do you follow I'm assuming you must follow the American politics.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, what's your opinion on, got to get an opinion on this, Tucker, Candace, and the woke right?
So it's a really interesting phrase that I'm still kind of trying to work out what I think of it.
The woke right part?
Yeah. But Candace Owens is insane.
Oh.
Like, absolutely barking mad insane. Like, to the point where I don't know if she actually realizes how crazy she is. I don't think she does. I think she is actually like...
I think one of the most common questions on X is, where the bloody hell is her husband? Grab her off there. Just get us counselling.
Yeah, I think she's it's a bit like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? I think. Yeah. Either she's going to be spectacularly right, one of the most spectacularly correct things in history, or, like you said, it's going to be a train wreck. And I think I know where that one's going. What about... Do you find Tucker Carlson an interesting case study? He's more interesting to me than Candace.
He's more interesting to me. I kind of like his, I actually really liked his interview with Putin. Even though, actually, you know what? I'll tell you a funny John Ruddock story.
Right, cool.
So you might wonder, how might that be related?
Yeah,
but,
no.
one of John's things is he loves to, like, you can't have him talk on any topic without going into history thing, because he loves history. He will go on about whatever historical dimension of whatever topic it is. And the Putin interview with Tucker Carlson, Putin goes, well, you have to start in 1850.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the filibuster.
After we watched the interview, John Ruddick messaged this group chat to me, and he's like, I don't know why I didn't just answer the question, why I had to talk about all this history stuff. And Rob Cribb, his good friend and former chief of staff, and I were like, John, you're exactly the same. Like, you're exactly the same.
Yeah,
so that was
hilarious. I remember I was watching that interview, and he's going on. I thought, how long is this going to go for?
Putin is a fascinating character, though. Like he and as much as I disagree with a lot of the Russian geopolitics, he is an example of a politician who knows what his national interest is. Like,
well, it is interesting, and I put an unpopular opinion on this, but if you're looking for a politician that had his country's interest first, would do whatever he could to fight for his nation, wouldn't care about the woke politics or whatever, there's three politicians on the planet that fit that bill. One of them's Putin, one of them's Trump, and the other one, as much as people don't like, I think Bibi.
Oh, Bibi, yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, although his comments about militarizing our beaches, I had to really, I'll comment on it now, but I wasn't going to comment on it next. But I was going to be like, I'd rather not fight them. No. I was going to do a Churchill joke, like it's going to be
not a Churchill joke, but
let's not fight them on the beaches. Like, I think if the cost of a free society is undermining our liberties that the terrorists are trying to defeat, then we're doing their job for them.
Well, the funny thing is, though, when you get over into Israel, in many ways, it's a lot like America, where they do have men walking around with submachine guns strapped to their shoulder, because terrorism is just a normal part of their day, sadly, for them. So he's only speaking, I think, from his experience, but I hope I'm like you. Our gun laws, for example, are strong enough. I think the big question on the guns is, with our gun laws, how did this bastard get 6 guns?
Yeah.
It's not changing the gun laws. How did he actually get those guns? Yes. He should never have got them.
Yes.
And instead, we're losing all our liberties. And if we've got to become, look at the other day on the memorial when Albo got booed. How many snipers did they have on the roof?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty sad in the country we grew up in, that we can't have a public gathering without having snipers. But mate, do you have to get going, or you want me to play these memes for you?
I'd love. I can finish on the memes.
All right. Well, we got 5 minutes. There you go.
Yep.
Let's share them. I thought, mate, they were just so good. It was just, where am I? There we go. Eureka Conservative. I've got to do that. Oh, that's that World War I ghost treatment. So I'll get you the Trump ones first. This one, George Trump. This is the Venezuela. How good's that?
That's like a Godzilla. That's like a Godzilla kind of one. I love
it. Exactly. And you know who would love that the most?
Trump, yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I'll get you. Trump would love that. It's amazing what they can do with this AI stuff. It's incredible. Here's another good one. I like this.
The spectacle of fearsome acts. That's what preserves the order of things.
Shall we play a game?
President Trump warned of serious retaliation after 2 U.S. Army soldiers and 1 U.S. interpreter were killed.
I'll hit you so hard in the face you'll be shitting with teeth.
You fuck around with us. If you do something random, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
I will rain down an ungodly fucking firestorm upon you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker!
Take a look to the sky just before you die. It's the last time you will. Rock and roll, after roar, builds the crumbling sky. Jack the door, builds the soul with a ruthless cry. Stranger now are his eyes to this mystery. Here's the silence so loud. Crack of dawn, all is gone, it will to be. Now they see what will be, blinded eyes to see. For whom the bell tolls, time marches on. For whom the bell tolls.
I should probably.
I don't know who's. You go.
I should probably say that sort of the American Second Iraq war porn sort of drumbeat like this was basically what made me go from being a classical liberal in the Liberal Party to a libertarian. So it was, I'm you know, I don't really, I watch things like that and I just kind of think it's just very, very like, you've seen Starship Troopers, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've seen that movie. It's like that, where it's like, you know, this sort of like society that requires constant violence, constant war, needs an enemy at all times. It's, I think it's probably America's worst angels.
To his credit, I think Trump pushes back against that more than most. In fact, that video is probably more relevant to Barack Obama. The stat that he had on dropping bombs on militants and civilians and all that was quite incredible. But mate, the main reason I do that, I just think these memes that they do over Trump and Christmas, it's just what they can do these days is incredible. Mate, I'll finish off because it'll be with your German background. You like this? Remember that ad I was telling you about?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, mate, brilliant ad. It's not so much a funny, I just think it's a brilliant ad. So I'll give you a look at it and then we can sign off. Here we go. And relevant for Christmas.
Jenkins, Oakley, Knight.
Ein Blinker kommt! Ein Blinker kommt!
Jim?
Jim, don't do it! Halt! Er ist nicht bewaffnet! Nein, Otto! Jim!
My name is Jim. Mein Name ist Otto. Pleased to meet you, Otto. Freut mich. Rose, she's called. It's schön. It's schön.
That is beautiful.
Danke. Happy Christmas. Frohe Weihnachten.
That is
How
lovely.
good an ad is that? And great way to finish off a Christmas Eve special, mate, and especially with my Anglo background. I'm from Wessex, your German background. You know what that ad proves? No matter what divides us, what unites us is greater.
Absolutely. All right, mate. Well, to you and all your listeners / watchers, have a Merry Christmas, and hopefully 2026 is better to all of us.
Oh, you always got to have hope. And from me and my boy, see, he's bored out of my brain. Merry Christmas to you, Jordan. I think, as I said before, mate, your story is amazing. I think this has been a great chat. And hopefully the people who've watched it and will watch it will enjoy it as much as we have, I think. Mate, in the new year, we got to get together for a coffee or a beer.
Sounds good.
All right, mate. Merry Christmas, buddy.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Stay safe. See you, mate. See you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Jordan, everybody. I think I've got to know Jordan very well over X. That was our first real live conversation. I think his story is amazing. I hope we covered an awful lot of ground like I did with Scott Challen. Like with my politics, I try and find people who I think I can have trust in that will serve our nation the best, and I think Jordan is definitely one of those guys. If you get a chance to vote for him, or like I said, David Limbrick, as you saw, I have issues with others in the Libertarian Party, but those two men, I think, have great ethics, have high integrity, and doing it for the right reasons. And I think Jordan's story of redemption there that he so graciously and eloquently shared with us is an amazing tribute to the man. Not many people could turn their life around the way he's done. So I hope you all appreciate it. Listen, I'll be back on for my live stream tomorrow. I'm taking Christmas Day and Boxing Day off. I've got to watch the Aussies beat the Poms in the first test. So if I don't see you on the live stream tomorrow, which for many I don't, I just want to wish you all a fantastic Christmas. Thank you for jumping on board and giving this old boomer a bit of a follow. And from me and my boy, he's bored out of his brain, JJ, we wish you a wonderful Christmas period, even if you're not a Christian. It's a wonderful period for families, for people to come together, and as you saw from that ad, from people to share common values. So hopefully that's what we can do with this Christmas. And as I always sign off with, God bless your kids, God bless your grandkids, God bless your pets, God bless our country, and let's make 2026 a great year for Australia. All right, good night all, and yeah, we'll see you all soon.